Police and fire departments went into heavy action, evacuating part of downtown at the Lincoln Plaza on Ackerd Street. And this was no drill. Channel 8's Janet St. James joins us now with details on that. Janet.
Well, police and the FBI have been overwhelmed with bomb threats and other concerning phone calls, most of which have been phoned in by children. But today, authorities took a series of phone calls very seriously. They came from the Lincoln Tower on Ackerd Street, where several people saw several men leave a package in this tan car parked on the street below the skyscraper. Those men were also seen videotaping the building inside and out, and that caused a great deal of concern for workers. Police responded in full force, evacuating thousands of employees from the building, which includes the Halliburton offices, the former workplace of Vice President Dick Cheney. The YMCA was also evacuated, along with more than 700 school children from the First Baptist Academy.
Just heart just started to race, and I just wanted to get out as soon as I could.
People are crazy. You know, after a tragedy, I think some people just take advantage of it.
A moon-suited member of the bomb squad eventually arrived to check out the suspicious package. He removed several parcels from the car. They all turned out to be harmless, and people were eventually allowed to return to their jobs. However, this situation only reinforces that police are taking every call and every concern very seriously, and that's why they call this being on high alert. This is Janet St. James reporting live from downtown Dallas. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Janet, thank you for that report. Well, New York is filled with smoke and ash as emergency teams desperately search for survivors in the rubble of the World Trade Center. Channel 8's Brett Shipp is in New Jersey, just across the bay from where the Twin Towers stood. And he joins us live with the latest on the search and rescue. Brett.
Mace, we have a breaking situation here. We'll pan into the scene where the Twin Towers used to stand just about 30 minutes ago. A secondary collapse was reported at the scene of the South Tower. We're told that's where the rubble stood, about 7 stories tall. A secondary collapse. The rescue workers in the scene had to be evacuated at that point. No word on any injuries, but I'm sure everyone there working at the scene feverishly all day and into last night were aware of that possibility and hopefully got to safety. Also, we're told that a 5th building, a smaller building, is on the verge of collapse, so they are also watching that. Again, residents of this normally vibrant and bustling New York City, and even here in New Jersey, just across the Hudson River, remain in a state of shock today. They're finding it nearly impossible to fathom the scope of the twin tragedy that hit and killed and injured so many people in downtown and lower Manhattan yesterday, robbing it of what is surely one of the greatest landmarks in the world. There was a glimmer of hope in the rubble of the World Trade Center this morning. Rescuers pulling a woman and 3 police officers from the debris alive, but the death toll is climbing as the search goes on. New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani said today 55 people are known dead. He says the number will surely rise into the thousands. The mayor also says that the number already may include the 270 police and firefighters that are unaccounted for. Now, the people in New York and here across the Hudson River are left waiting to hear word about family members and friends, wondering what the final toll will be and also wondering the big question, why?
I guess everybody feels an emptiness. A lot of lives lost, a lot of work lost. There's going to be a lot of families destroyed. It's just a tragedy. It's a big loss. It looks so empty without the towers.
It's just devastating. I don't, you know, what words can you use to talk about people can do such things to other people, you know?
Again, New Yorkers are still grappling with the absence of the Twin Towers, which now lie in a smoldering heap about 5 stories high. Rescuers using cranes and bulldozers and picks and shovels to clear the debris. It could take months, we are told, to do that. The work is slow and workers are careful not to harm any survivors. They are using K9 dogs to try to sniff for survivors. They are using thermal monitoring equipment to try to sense for any heat that might be indicative of a live person inside the rubble. We will We're told in many reports earlier today of folks using their cell phones from inside the rubble. No one knows where, but them reporting out that they are alive and to keep digging. And again, that rescue effort going on night and day. Folks somewhat less optimistic, we are told, at the scene of the second suicide, hijacking and crash, that of course being in Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon, and that's where we go live now to Channel 8's Jim Fry. Jim?
Well, Brett, we're in downtown Washington, D.C. right now, and here we are learning new details by the hour, sometimes by the minute. For example, the FBI just a little while ago said that the hijackers who took control of the 4 planes apparently were pilots who had been trained here in the U.S. At the Pentagon, rescue efforts have now turned into recovery operations.
A gaping hole, the twisted wreckage and charred skin at the center of military power were the remains of terror. The president called Tuesday's attacks more than terrorism.
They were acts of war.
At the FBI, there is new information on the attackers' intentions.
Our government has credible evidence that the White House and Air Force One were targets.
One day after, rescue workers here said there was no hope of any more survivors. The devastation glimpsed from the outside reached deep into the complex.
As I've been to Oklahoma, I've seen Oklahoma. This is comparable to that.
Down on your end. Can you check for me?
Around Washington, military police were posted in many places.
I'm a government employee. I work
Fire department have it blocked up. You can't go up there right now.
This despite the president's assurance the American way of life would not change. George W. Bush promised the enemy, as he put it, would not be able to hide forever.
We will rally the world. We will be patient. We'll be focused. And we will be steadfast in our determination.
From a nearby highway, the untouched side of the Pentagon seemed normal in the midday sun. The fires finally out. A handful of people gravitated to the other side to live it again, such as Ruth Gallegos, who brought her sons, 6 years and 2 years old.
It's very scary. It's very scary. And I'm trying to teach my son that it's real life, and it's going to hurt.
There was speculation as early as yesterday that the plane that hit the Pentagon was indeed intended for the White House, but no officials right now will elaborate on how or when they think the terrorists might have hit Air Force One, which was on the ground at the time of in Florida, that is, at the time of the simultaneous hijackings. Scott?
Jim Fry in Washington. Jim, thank you very much. Thousands of people returned to work in downtown Dallas this morning. Many of the city's high-rises were evacuated yesterday in light of the tragedy. Those buildings were reopened today, and traffic was back to normal for morning rush hour. Of course, many of the workers were anxious about returning, but they said that life must go on. And in Fort Worth, it was as close to business as usual as can be expected. All federal buildings reopened today. City buildings and offices in Fort Worth never really closed in the wake of the terrorist acts. The city's Emergency Operations Center remains on standby mode, which is typical. And only a skeletal crew will remain at the command center overnight. Then that crew will disband on Thursday.
A virtual ban on air travel continues. At DFW Airport, Love Field, and airports around the country, passengers will encounter heightened security measures once operations are back up. Uniformed officers and dogs will be patrolling terminals. Ticketless travel, curbside baggage check-in, and 1-hour parking will be prohibited. Only passengers with tickets will be allowed at the gates. Passengers are also urged to arrive at least 2 hours before takeoff, reduce carry-on items, and be prepared to show ID, also to undergo extensive questioning. Channel 8's Don Wall joins us live from DFW Airport now with more on the situation there. Don?
Macy, as you can see here at the ticket counter, DFW Airport is a ghost town. It was a strange day at the airport. There were flurries of activity, certainly a heightened sense of security, and now extreme quiet. The bottom line is nobody's going anywhere yet.
You need to leave the terminal. The dogs are coming in just to safety. Sweep the building.
Okay, thank you.
People who arrived at the airport this morning were turned away. Each terminal was evacuated and closed so that bomb-sniffing dogs could be brought in to perform security sweeps. Terminal C opened just before noon. and there was a brief rush of passengers trying to get rebooked. Most passengers welcome the tighter security and say they are not afraid to fly.
Well, so far it looks fine. I mean, there is more security, and I don't think I'm scared of flying.
Flying, like anything else, is a risk. Life is a risk, so it's you do the best you can with it. Not a problem.
But the planes weren't going anywhere. Virtually the entire schedule was canceled. Daniel O'Connor is trying to get back to New York.
They're saying that the FAA has shut down flights, all flights nationally until 12 noon tomorrow.
People hoping to fly showed a tremendous amount of patience, and employees tried to be as accommodating as possible. Many passengers were sent back to local hotels with vouchers for food and lodging.
So this is for the hotel.
And at this point, no planes are flying in or out. The FAA ban on flying nationwide continues. Now with the story from Love Field, let's go to Channel 8's Cynthia Vega.
Thanks, Don. It is a very similar situation here as you described at DFW. In fact, airport officials tell us that although the airport is open, until they receive that okay from the FAA, the planes remain grounded. In the meantime, airline passengers stranded here since yesterday when their flights were diverted to Dallas began showing up this morning with scheduled flights at 11:30. Instead, they were told all flights today are canceled, which means checking into local hotels for a second night in a row. Ellen Cotty is trying to get home to California. Like other passengers, she's still in limbo, but seems to be taking it well.
I'm pretty flexible, and you just have to go with the flow. And hey, my inconvenience as to what happened yesterday is nothing compared to some of the people we feel so bad for.
And in light of yesterday's tragedy, there will be many more security measures in place in this airport as well as DFW, as you folks have already mentioned, and they will be in effect, and they are encouraging people to give themselves at least that 2 hours to get here on time and also to get on board safely. But as we know, there is no guarantee when those flights will resume. Live at Love Field, I'm Cynthia Vega. Back to you, Macy.
All right, Cynthia, thank you for that report. The hijackings were the final blow for Midway Airlines. The air carrier was already operating under bankruptcy protection and today announced it would immediately cease operations. 1,700 airline employees were cut. Ticketed passengers will receive refunds. Airline officials say the company simply lacks the resources to survive the expected drop in demand for air travel.
The Bush administration today warned of unjustified gasoline gouging. U.S. Energy Secretary Spencer Abrahams says that normal fuel supplies are still flowing. In fact, ExxonMobil and Chevron both froze wholesale fuel prices at the levels that were set before yesterday's attacks. The Texas Attorney General's office has set up a hotline to report gas gouging, and we've heard some stories of that. You can call the phone number on your screen. Actually, there are two of them, 1-800-337-3928 or 1-800-252-8011. Now, prices in North Texas seem to change in either direction depending on where you look. A viewer called us about an Exxon station in Louisville raising prices, and as our crews drove up to the station, the clerk was changing the signs, dropping each grade by 10 cents. Irving-based ExxonMobil told News 8 it is not raising any prices at their owned and operated stations, and the company is asking franchisees to do the same.
It infuriated me that someone would try to price gouge upon the backs of Americans. 10, 20, 15, who knows how many thousands have been killed in the World Trade Center.
Many smaller stations cite rampant rumors of price hikes for raising their prices. Many of them have since backed off. A gas station owner in Oklahoma City is offering refunds today for overcharging his customers yesterday.
Well, as you might expect, many North Texans have plenty to say about the events out of Washington, D.C. and New York. Some scared, some angry, and many still in shock.
And I just think that what's happening is just astonishing. I mean, I never thought, you know, in all the days I've been on this earth that anything would happen like that.
If it happens in New York, it can happen everywhere in the world. Nowhere is now safe.
I feel terrible. I mean, I still feel like I'm just walking around, feel like a dream.
I have faith in our government. I have faith in our military. I have faith in a common man.
The terrorist attacks may have a huge effect on the economy. One concern is how consumers will react. Consumer spending has gone up this year, essentially propping up the sputtering economy. But will they now pull back? Coming up on News 8 at 6, what consumers think as businesses reopen today and try to carry on, and what history tells us about the economy and how it reacts to national tragedies.
Well, Wall Street did not have a chance to react today. It was closed again. Analysts are not predicting how the terrorist tragedy will affect the market, but world markets have reacted. David Johnson is joining us now from his Dallas office with that information. David is our business analyst. David, thanks for joining us.
Sure, Scott.
David, I know that the Hang Seng went down yesterday. The FTSE went down. What happened today?
There was a remarkable recovery, especially in the European markets. Now, the Asian markets were weak. It was really their first chance to react because they weren't open, obviously, when the terrorist attack took place. But the European markets, which had sold off yesterday, recovered today. We saw the United Kingdom's FTSE average up 2.8%, up 136 points. The DAX in Germany was up, as was the CAC in Paris, even the Swiss market. And of course, the Swiss market is dominated by a lot of these big insurance companies, reinsurers. They're going to have tremendous hits paying for some of the damages. That market was actually up 2.5%. We also got word late today, Scott, from Dick Brasso, the head of the New York Stock Exchange, and Wick Simmons, the head of the NASDAQ, that they expect to resume equity trading no later than Monday. They think they might be doing it Friday. It's another way of saying the stock markets are going to be closed again tomorrow. However, the biggest market, and one that absolutely dwarfs the stock market, the equity markets, the government bond market, will resume trading at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Believe it or not, that is very good news. Money's got to go somewhere, and a lot of it goes into government bonds.
David Johnson, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be talking to you a lot in the future.
Thanks, Scott. Bye.
73 Texans who are part of an urban search and disaster team are awaiting their flight to New York. The firefighters, doctors, and rescue workers come from North Texas and across the state. They're gathered right now at a staging area at the Texas A&M campus. The team, known as Texas Task Force 1, will help search the debris near the World Trade Center. The group should have taken off by now, but has been delayed because rescue coordinators in New York are having difficulty organizing that effort. Well, now back to the search for those responsible. Heavily armed police and FBI agents stormed a downtown Boston hotel this afternoon. They searched 2 rooms at the Westin Copley, believed to have been used by suspects in the attacks. Authorities reportedly found a link to a name on the manifest of one of the hijacked flights. And in Venice, Florida, FBI agents questioned a couple who apparently unknowingly housed 2 men wanted by police. The suspects apparently stayed at the home while going to flight school last summer. But the man authorities really want to talk to is Osama bin Laden.
Joining us now to talk about this is Dr. Robert Taylor. He's a terrorism expert from the University of North Texas. Doctor, thank you for being with us.
No problem.
Officials hesitant to say specifically who they're looking for, but the main suspect seems to be bin Laden. Is that the right thing to do?
Oh, absolutely. Since, certainly within the last 10 years, he's been the most active terrorist in the world. He's declared openly a war against the United States. He's certainly been implicated in many of the more infamous crimes of terrorism that we've seen, even back to the original 1993 bombing at the World Trade Center. He was implicated.
Okay.
Doctor, when terrorist groups do their deed, their terrorist act, for a long time, they wanted to take responsibility. Osama bin Laden has said in an Arabic newspaper, I did not do it. I didn't have anything to do with it.
Right. Well, those were the old days. People were quick to make credit for hijackings and the like, but not today. They realize that there's technological surveillance capabilities for people who take credit right away. Bin Laden is very intelligent. He's a person who has really unlimited wealth. For something like this to be conducted without his knowledge and without his financing and without his intelligence apparatus would almost be impossible coming out of the Middle East.
Investigators are demanding cooperation from surrounding countries of Afghanistan. They have spoken specifically with people from Pakistan. How realistic is it to think that they can get help from that area?
Oh, I don't think it's realistic at all, and I think that the American public and the American government are going to demand action. I think that there will be some kind of action versus some kind of diplomatic statement to try to get Osama bin Laden to be given up, or like from Afghanistan or the like.
Colin Powell said, and some other folks there at the Pentagon today and the State Department today, said that they are going to try diplomacy first. But after that, if they find out something for sure, they're going to go in. But they have already stated, we tried diplomacy.
Sure, we've been trying diplomacy for at least 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
We've lost a lot of people. Yesterday was a catastrophic loss, a tragic loss. I don't think that the diplomatic end is going to work. And I don't think that my views are alone. I think there's a number of people in the government that now say that there's action that needs to be taken. Certainly in our intelligence area, it needs to be upgraded, and certainly in terms of looking at this in terms of an act of war instead of a crime.
Senator Arlen Specter, one of them, declaring war today. Thank you.
Tough stuff.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. Well, the images of devastation that have blanketed the nation since yesterday are a history lesson in the making for school students.
And it's a lesson that comes with a range of emotions and issues. Channel 8's Ana Martinez shows us.
Is sitting at my desk, but just put it right in the middle. History is part of the focus in the gifted and talented humanities class at R.L. Turner High School. The day after the most horrific attack ever on the U.S., teacher Amy Farrell tries to help her students grasp the historical impact.
And there's that billowing cloud that we all kept seeing over and over again yesterday.
And I never would have thought that, hey, that's here in New York, someplace I've been, and I've been in those towers, and this is happening to me. This isn't a dream. This is real life.
Didn't look like the United States. It looked like when we were studying last year, the Middle East, the Palestinian War.
They were like celebrating, you know, they were like throwing parties and stuff, and I was just so shocked, like, do they really hate us that much now?
They're all laughing and happy about this whole situation while I'm at home wondering where my dad is.
Like this young man, Principal Kim Holland says many R.L. Turner students and teachers have family or friends in the airline business. Many were on edge Tuesday, unsure of their loved one's fate.
We deal with the issue. I think it would have been foolish for any of us to try to teach math or English yesterday until we had given our students an opportunity to talk about this.
This student learned Tuesday night his dad is okay, but there are still other worries these students want and need to discuss.
How many of you have been thinking about the possibility of war?
All that's going through my mind is that I'm going to be living through war times. That's really scary because, you know, you never think that that would happen to you. You know, possibility of war, it might.
While sharing their thoughts doesn't make this history lesson any less painful, it does give these young people a perspective that makes real life easier to bear. Ana Martinez, Channel 8 News.
Just before we go back to network today, we want to tell you about a special relief effort going on.
Channel 8's parent company, BELO, and Texas Chase Banks have set up a Spirit of America Relief Fund, and Troy Duncan joins us now to tell us more about that. Troy.
Well, I started talking to you about this last night. Chase Banks in Dallas-Fort Worth today. Tell me response has been great. If you haven't done this, you can make your check out. You can forget that account number I gave you last night. If you wrote that on it, that's fine. But to make it easier, make your check to American Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund and take it directly to any of the Chase Bank locations in Dallas-Fort Worth, and that will get the money to the Red Cross and go directly to the victims and the survivors of this tragedy in the East. So now it's just American Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund. Make it out to that and then take it to a Chase Bank. I got some more I want to tell you about this at 6 o'clock, but right now it's almost time to go back to Peter Jennings. Guys?
All right.
It doesn't matter who you are or where you live. This week, all Americans have come together.
That's right. Our John Pronk visited one North Texas town where the tragic events are really just now beginning to settle in.
McKinney is no longer a small town, but folks here say it still has a small town feel. A closeness among its 25,000 or so residents who are brought even closer with the events of this horrific week.
But we've seen lots of flags, which is nice. Lots of people ready to just stand up and do what they need to do.
Joanne Holly turned to her faith as tragedy unfolded.
The Lord is trying to tell us something, you know. It's getting that close to home, to where we are.
You know, our firefighters and police officers are going to get pretty exhausted after a period of time. So.
At the Palace Barbershop, which has stood here over a century, the television has stayed on.
I tell you what I hear and see, the hope that the country's coming together.
Hello, Mr. Fleet. How are you?
Of course, it is the focus of conversation at the Pantry, a local luncheon hangout.
I think that the fact that this has happened is going to make us a closer-knit nation. I think our Congress and our President will work together on the same side now.
But for many, this day was a time to try and get back to a degree of normality.
I was thinking about that this morning. I was thinking, what should I do? And you just go on automatic pilot. You get up, and you take a shower, and get dressed, and you think, what do I do next? Well, what you do next is you go to work.
And most important, folks in this Collin County community say they have much in common with New Yorkers this day as Americans.
We're still all shocked by what happened. We also know that America will bounce back.
John Pronk, Channel 8 News, McKinney, Texas.
We invite you to stay with News 8 as details come to light on the terrorist attacks.
ABC News is going to continue its live coverage throughout the evening. We're going to keep you up to date on any developments here in North Texas.
And now we rejoin Peter Jennings. Good night.
You've been watching News 8's continuing coverage of America Under Attack, the day after. Stay with News 8 for all the latest developments. We now rejoin ABC News.
It's been 33 hours since the terrible and unprecedented attack on the United States. There is, as we've said, an enormous search and rescue operation and enormous and intense criminal investigation. And we're just beginning to understand the extent of the catastrophe.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Well, of course, it is part of our continuing coverage, and we'll try to do, as I said, something of an ordered World News Tonight, which will last not for half an hour, but for an hour in many parts of the country. Today we have somewhat of a clearer sense of the scope of what is involved in recovering from this catastrophe, which occurred in the country yesterday. We have significant new details to report. Late this afternoon in Lower Manhattan, you heard just a few minutes ago, those of you who are on the full network, about the remaining portions of the South Tower at the World Trade Center coming down. This caused a serious measure of concern, one could add, panic in certain parts of southern New York because people did not understand completely what was happening. But what you're looking at here is the evacuation of the rescue workers today, this afternoon, in that particular area. Now, the White House spokesman Ari Fleischer has said today that the White House and Air Force One were also targets. We'll investigate that. ABC News has learned that investigators believe they've identified all 12 of the people who hijacked the 4 planes. And several people in Florida and in the Boston area have been detained and certainly questioned in connection with the attacks. At the Pentagon today, this was a very moving scene this afternoon. Rescue workers unfurled a large American flag from the roof of the building, their way, in part, we think, of welcoming President Bush, who paid a visit to this afternoon. We'll have that. The President, in a meeting of his cabinet this morning, said the U.S. was committed to a monumental struggle of good versus evil, and it is not yet clear how the U.S. is going to respond or against whom. As you have seen repeatedly throughout the day, a cloud still hangs over Lower Manhattan tonight, just south of our newsroom here. A few people have been pulled from the rubble that was the World Trade Center. The news from there, we have to tell you, you can look at it and understand, is very grim indeed. We went to the scene today, and with hope, one doctor told us, and he came out with a feeling of despair. Many people are believed dead. Nobody wants to put a number on it. We know how many people worked in the area. We do know that the numbers at the Pentagon are lower than certainly were estimated in the public arena yesterday, and that is as far as we got with those numbers, but we'll come back to them. Throughout the day, we have been getting the first reasonable clues as the result of the investigation as to who may have been responsible. So we're going to start this World News Tonight with a report from ABC's Brian Ross.
Peter, the investigation is moving with great speed, with new developments even as we speak at this hour. FBI agents are dusting for prints at the Dulles airport. They've carried out a search warrant at a boarding house in Hollywood, Florida. And in Germany, police in Hamburg are active tonight. From Boston to Florida, heavily armed FBI agents and local police moved quickly and forcefully today to investigate what the Attorney General called acts of war.
The Department of Justice has undertaken perhaps the most massive and intensive investigation ever conducted in America.
As at this hotel in Boston, agents were looking for evidence of the terrorist movements and seeking to unravel what was an elaborate network that operated undetected for more than a year before yesterday's coordinated attacks.
The 4 planes were hijacked by between 3 and 6 individuals per plane, using knives and box cutters, and in some cases making bomb threats.
Starting last night, the FBI seized a car left at the Boston airport that led them to the identity of one of the estimated 12 terrorist hijackers, an Egyptian national by the name of Mohammed Atta.
We also have identified through a number of leads, principally at the cities of origin, a number of individuals whom we believe may have had something to do with the hijackings, and we are pursuing those leads aggressively.
By this morning, agents were at a small airport in Venice, Florida, where Atta and an accomplice took flying lessons and earned private pilot's licenses in the summer of 2000. A fellow student said the two had lots of money and kept to themselves.
They were talking about flying for a private company, like rich man and stuff like that.
The two men stayed at a nearby house where they were remembered as rude and unlikable.
Very sarcastic, and it gave me the impression that they didn't really care that highly for ladies or whoever, and that's about it.
Also today, authorities were tracking another set of 6 hijackers who were believed to have entered the country from Canada at a small border crossing in Jackman, Maine. The men are then believed to have flown into Boston on commuter flights yesterday morning from Bangor and Portland, Maine, with the thought of clearing security at the smaller airports instead of Boston.
Each one was carrying some type of small shoulder bag, not a real bulky one, but something small. Both kind of dark-complected, dark hair.
Peter, there are dozens of leads FBI agents are working on. No one has been arrested, but several people have been detained for questioning. By one estimate, as many as 50 people may have been involved in helping provide the network for the terrorists to operate in this country over the last year. Peter?
I watched Brian Ross, who's been working on the investigation. I don't think anybody's been working harder on this investigation than John Miller has, who has been with us day and night on this. So take this and enlarge it or add to it as you will in terms of what we really think is going on today.
Well, the roundup, and I don't mean the roundup of people, the roundup of what's going on in the investigation, 3 are being held in Boston. We'll get back to them. 3 were arrested or detained. There are some semantics here. From a train in Providence, Rhode Island, being held on immigration charges.
This is where Amtrak was actually stopped and people were taken off and people were
Federal agents boarded the plane, identified these people and have detained them. FBI agents in Newark are looking for the trail of several men they believe who departed on that flight from Newark to San Francisco. So what you see is the FBI is assuming that there are 12 to 25 or 26 hijackers, depending on if each flight had, 3 or 6, are presumed dead in the crashes. But they are seeing traces that there were other people, associates, support people left behind. Now, what they're doing is something they've done before. Right around the Millennium celebration, when they felt that there was an imminent attack, they used the immigration laws to sweep out through Boston, again, ironically, and other cities, and pick up people who were on their watch lists, who they had information and tips about. Today in Boston, you see this dramatic scene unfolding. A heavily armed Boston SWAT team entering the Westin Hotel just off Boylston Street in Copley Plaza. This came about when FBI agents followed the paper trail from that car at the airport, the car they believe the hijackers used, to a hotel. They were not expecting to find anyone in the hotel room. To their surprise, as they approached to conduct a search, 3 people came out of the room, 2 women and a man. They put them in custody to identify them, to question them, and ultimately they are also being detained on an immigration charge. Searched the room. What they found inside, no explosives, pamphlets, papers though, and they said hair dye, which they are suggesting may have been used by some of their suspects to change their appearance so that they wouldn't appear to be as they were described by hotel workers.
One of the things that seems to me to be a change from yesterday to today, we have this huge failure in intelligence yesterday knowing this was happening, but if everything we're getting today is reasonably solid, then the leaving of the trail by the perpetrators has enabled law enforcement to move pretty quickly.
I would say so, and what you see here is the things they learned in Florida, that they obtained pilot's licenses, that they went for higher grades of pilot license, some of the time invested here, that they left this car behind in Boston after having an argument, that they registered under the same name as the paper trail. Of course, suicide bombers are not generally concerned with the trail that they leave. They don't have to worry about being caught by the law. But what the law is hoping, the FBI and the intelligence community, is that they will get associates who had knowledge, who aided or abetted, and that from those people they'll glean a better look into who is really behind this. And that's why this is geared up with such energy now.
Thanks very much, John Miller, who has been with us throughout the day, will be with us throughout the evening. I think the most startling thing we heard today was that the White House, in the person of the president's spokesperson, said that the White House itself was actually a target of one of the groups of terrorists on one of the aircraft. And that takes us immediately to the White House and ABC's Terry Moran. Terry, there's that, and then we'll come in a minute to the president's visit to the Pentagon this afternoon. Start with the message that the White House might have been a target.
It was as clear as could be, Peter, because today Ari Fleischer at the briefing said that the White House in this investigation had developed what he called specific and credible information that the White House and Air Force One were intended targets. And then Ari Fleischer went on to say that this investigation had led them to believe that the plane that hit the Pentagon was actually originally intended to hit the White House. This opens a whole raft of questions, but let me take you back to those harrowing moments. About 34 hours ago, the White House was being evacuated. First, White House staffers told to leave the building in an orderly fashion, and then an agent coming in, we are told, and saying, no, just run, just get out. And you can see that people did exit the building very, very quickly. At this time, as the White House was being evacuated, the President of the United States was in Sarasota, Florida, and he took off from Sarasota, originally intending to come back to the Washington area, to Andrews Air Force Base. The plane was diverted to Barksdale Air Force Base outside of Shreveport in Louisiana. And the White House says Air Force One itself was a target. ABC's Ann Compton was on that flight. She said it flew at an unusually high altitude, 40,000 feet. When it landed in Shreveport, reporters on board were told not to let people know where they were. The president made a statement there and then took off for Nebraska. And while they were in the air, they were accompanied by fighter jets off of each wing. This dramatic evidence of the level of threat that the Secret Service and the military authorities believed that the president was under.
Now, Terry, as we talked a little earlier today, you pointed out that there isn't much other business being done at the White House today, and there hasn't been much else done in the Congress as well. But the president did want to go over to the Pentagon to express his sentiments to the people there, and he did so just a short while ago.
Yes, he did. In fact, he is still there, we are told. The president remains inside the building now. A little while ago, he went to the Pentagon and toured the damage and the destruction with Secretary Rumsfeld. He told the rescue workers who were assembled there that he was overwhelmed by the destruction that he saw. He told them that he was grateful to everybody who was working there heroically, as he said, to search and rescue if there was any rescue to be done. He also thanked Americans for giving blood in the numbers that they have. He said being there made him sad and made him angry. He said the United States will not be cowed by this act and that we will go on, echoing the kinds of comments he's made throughout. This was a visit that we are told he wanted to make in spite of what we are told are continuing concerns about the president's security.
Thank you very much, Terry Moran at the White House. We'll be back to you throughout the evening. Now let us turn to the two crime scenes themselves, the Pentagon and New York itself, but particularly New York, where everybody continues to believe that there has been a huge loss of life and nobody really wants to or is in a position to say so. But ABC's Diane Sawyer has been monitoring this and covering this all day long. Diane, what's the current situation and what has the day really been like?
Well, Peter, first let me tell you that I've come up here on this roof about 4 blocks from the World Trade Center because I want to talk first maybe about a purely symbolic casualty. I'm going to send you 2 postcards. Here is a postcard of the skyline of New York as everybody has known it up till 2 days ago. And here is a postcard of the skyline as it is now. I also heard down on the ground some worrying news. They are talking about 4 buildings now, 4 additional buildings in shaky condition. The one they're most worried about is the giant Millennium Hotel. We know that yesterday night the windows had all melted in it, and they're saying now it is in a worrying condition. If it should collapse, think of what it's going to add to the work of the rescue teams as they try to sift through all the debris. Earlier, I know you reported and you showed everybody what it was like here when the rest of World Trade Center Tower #1 went down, that spiny metal cathedral that was standing and groaning last night when I went down there to see it. It collapsed. People were terrified. They were racing from the scene. And of course, as you said earlier, smoke is now just cascading over all of Manhattan, and there are health advisories about the asbestos, plastic, and smoke in the air. Now, the casualty figures that you have talked about, the grim ones, we have been calling, we have been searching. Here's all I can tell you at this point. 11,000 people reportedly at local hospitals. 2,000 of what they're calling the walking wounded ferried over to New Jersey for treatment there. We're talking about the 55 known dead in addition to the 266 who were on the planes. We keep calling and saying, do you have any sense at all how many people have been reported missing? No sense at all how many people have been reported missing, as now the 3,000 to 5,000 rescue workers, teams of dogs, metal detectors, sound detectors, people looking for just the sound of somebody scratching on metal are out there trying to find people still in the field. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to take you down on the field and show you some of these emotional stories from the rescue workers there. But I'll tell you, Peter, if you want another symbol, it was the police officer who was downstairs on the curb as I came up, head in his hands, tears in his eyes, and he just looked up and said, it's just too tough. Peter?
Thanks very much, Diane Sawyer. And as Diane makes clear, we're going to go back to her before very long. Today at the Pentagon, the Secretary of Defense, Don Rumsfeld, said that earlier estimates, and these were estimates made by non-Pentagon officials, that up to 800 people had perished in the Pentagon, were too high. Let's try to get the Pentagon in perspective now. Here's ABC's John Yang.
Thank everybody.
When the sun rose this morning, the firefighters and rescue workers were still on the job, just as they had been for nearly 24 hours.
There's a lot of steel, there's a lot of concrete, glass, wood, metal rebar that's protruding from the building. It's very warm outside. Those all added together with the destruction itself kind of heightens the situation inside.
They work 12-hour shifts, and the work is gruesome.
It's worse than they thought it was going to be. Stepping over things that they assume are bodies that they don't know for a fact because it's so dark on the inside.
The collapse of part of the Pentagon left about 100 military personnel missing, while the number of missing civilians is unknown. Officials hope the death toll will be much lower than the 800 projected yesterday.
From everything that we currently know, the estimate that's been widely reported is considerably high, and we certainly pray that that's the case.
Some stories of the missing have happy endings. Hospital officials called Michael Kurtz about his badly burned wife.
I came in teary-eyed. I didn't recognize my wife of 31 years.
Others are still waiting for answers. Herman Hallman's wife is among the missing.
Nobody could give me a direct, information. They said, call this hospital, call that hospital. These are the 5 hospitals that we took people to.
In the fraternity of fire and rescue workers, the men and women toiling here at the Pentagon also felt the loss of yesterday's attacks. They had often worked at disasters around the world with the New York City firefighters and rescuers killed when the World Trade Center towers collapsed. The loss, they say, makes them redouble their efforts.
Our job is here and our job is now, so we continue to do that, if nothing else, to memorialize the greatness of these men and women that were killed yesterday.
It is a job that will only intensify in the coming days. John Yang, ABC News, the Pentagon.
And the president, of course, did see that flag because he was over at the Pentagon a short while ago and did see the flag which the firefighters had hung on the side of the building which he was going to visit. The Transportation Secretary said today that the government is going to allow very limited air travel to resume, and by this, Mr. Mineta means travelers whose flights were diverted during or immediately after the attacks in New York and in Washington may continue on their routes. But the country's air system is still very much in jeopardy. ABC's Lisa Stark, ABC's Lisa Stark covers aviation for us. Thanks very much, Lisa.
Well, Peter, we had hoped early in the day that sometime around noon Eastern time, the Federal Aviation Administration would reopen the nation's airspace. Airlines could start resuming some sort of scheduled service. As the day went on, it was clear that was not to be, that the security measures were simply not in place yet to allow that to happen. So as you've reported, as of tonight, we have only very limited air service here in the United States.
Today, virtually the only planes moving were flights diverted from their original destinations, including some that had been forced to land in Canada. Other passengers at airports around the United States were told they were going nowhere. At Dallas-Fort Worth, there was frustration from passengers and airline employees.
It's been suspended by the FAA indefinitely. Now, indefinitely maybe is tomorrow morning. It may be 2 weeks from now.
On a normal travel day, there are as many as 40,000 flights in the United States. On this day, as planes sat parked on the ground, many of the major airports were deserted. This was Los Angeles International. At Washington's National Airport, passengers were escorted in to collect luggage they had not been able to get yesterday. The delay in resuming air travel is due to stringent new security measures that airports and airlines must first put in place. They include an explosives check before airports reopen, no curbside check-in, ticketed passengers only allowed at the gates, a ban on all knives on planes, and planes will be thoroughly searched before passengers are allowed on board.
I know that all Americans want us to move as quickly and prudently as possible to return our national airspace system to normal, and we will, as soon as we can do so safely.
No doubt these security measures will lead to significant delays. Passengers will notice more uniformed officers, random identification checks, and restrictions on vehicles near the airport.
It's inconvenient, but nothing compared to what people in the East have gone through. So you got to do what you got to do.
I think everybody will embrace whatever new security mechanisms are put in place with a lot of welcome over the next month or two. But then they're going to get tired of it.
One airline told us it could be weeks before the air transportation system is truly up and running.
And it is still very unclear when any regularly scheduled service will truly begin. It's supposed to begin tomorrow. Every airline has their own estimation of when that might be. Some airlines will resume those flights tonight, the flights that were diverted. Some will not even do so until tomorrow morning. So I would expect it will still be very chaotic tomorrow as the airlines and the FAA try to figure out how to get the system back up and running.
Thanks very much, Lisa Stark. Lisa Stark, who's in Seattle and has been stranded in Seattle ever since. To some people, this is an inconvenience. To some, it's a real business problem. And to others, it is a real catastrophe. Here's an example. The chief of transplant surgery at the University of Pittsburgh, Dr. John Fung, told us that they had a liver which was available for transplant that would have gone to a person in Philadelphia, but they couldn't fly from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia, which they needed that kind of speed in circumstances like this, and so the person who most needed it did not get it. Instead, they've used it on a patient in Pittsburgh who was not nearly as sick, and that's exactly the kind of thing in extremis that is happening as a result of the aviation system continuing to be locked down. Now, we've been very concerned and curious and mystified by what's been happening, or what happened, not ultimately, but in the process of United Flight 93, which was the 757 left Newark to go to San Francisco and ended up crashing in Pennsylvania. But ABC's Connie Chung has been talking to United Airlines today, and I think may have more. Connie?
Yes, Peter, I've also been talking to American Airlines representatives and mainly the families of victims who were involved in the hijackings of those families of victims who were on board those 4 planes that were hijacked. And what I have discovered is something that could be considered quite disturbing to many people. And that is that both airlines have offered immediately to the next of kin $25,000. Now, you may say this is a standard practice, but in these particular instances, both United Airlines and American Airlines are offering, right as they say, up front, automatically, as soon as they determine who the next of kin is. They send a letter with a check immediately to the family. The last time, what I was curious about was, when did this practice start? I mean, we've heard about settlements between the families of loved ones who become victims in airline crashes, but is this standard practice? Well, American Airlines got back to me on that question and said the first time that that was ever done was just the previous incident. That was in June of 1999, a crash in Little Rock, Arkansas. Right at that time, apparently all the airlines began offering cash settlements up front. And prior to that, this practice had not occurred. One other question that I wanted to know was, is this $25,000 per victim? And it is. It is. If a family has more than one member who was killed in any of these incidents, it is upped beyond $25,000.
Connie, thanks very much. Connie Chung, it's clearly something we want to talk to in the future to United Airlines and American Airlines. Connie points out at the beginning that it's standard operating procedure for airlines at the moment, and no further comment on it at the moment. You can feel a measure of irritation in the air. There's no question about that, at the very least. But yesterday's attacks have generated an enormous and visceral anger at a lot of things around the country, most of all that the United States was vulnerable and that these terrorists managed to reach their objective. Here's ABC's Dean Reynolds in Chicago.
Judging from conversations across the country today, many people are angry and unwilling to wait long for an American retaliation.
Revenge. I want to get even.
This woman near Miami spoke for many.
Send out the F-15s, the F-16s, and go after them.
From St. Louis,
I think we should bomb them back. I really do.
Where the Gateway Arch reopened, came a call for action.
The people should be angry that these terrorists are protected by other countries around the world.
It will be hard to pinpoint a culprit, but many Americans, like this immigrant from Lebanon, said that was no excuse for delay.
They know who's behind all this. They know what countries supporting all these people. They give them money, they give them weapons, they give them everything.
A stranded flyer in Wichita was not interested in a measured response.
They need to find out whoever did this, and they need to clean their clock. I mean, into the Stone Age. This is ridiculous. This does not happen in the United States.
In Columbus, Ohio, it was all about stature.
They can't push us around like this. We're the #1 nation, and let's do something about it.
And in Los Angeles, a woman said anything short of a violent response would be useless.
No, I don't feel vengeance, but I think the enemy's got to be eradicated. And you cannot talk with the enemy. You can't rationalize when all they want to do is kill.
For commuters in Chicago, there was no stomach for restraint.
I feel that if we need to have a full-scale war, then we should go ahead and do it. We should at least let them know that the United States isn't going to tolerate this.
I think these people, whoever did it, and I have no idea who did it, are a bunch of cowards. And I would love to face them face to face and tell them that they're a bunch of cowards.
A Palestinian worshiper at a downtown mosque supported the president.
President Bush should go after who's doing this and who's harboring them.
But as she dropped her young children off at school this morning, one mother touched on the difficulty a tough response would face.
Can we take out 1 or 2 people and be done with it? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think it's a cultural thing, and you can't eradicate an entire culture.
Elected officials across the country continue to call for calm, and some, including Illinois Governor George Ryan, are warning people not to take matters into their own hands. Ryan issued that warning in light of reports that several mosques in this area have received threatening phone calls. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Chicago.
Thank you, Dean. As the mayor of New York said, there's no accounting for prejudice and bigotry at a time like this, and people's passions have boiled over, and so has their prejudice and bigotry on occasion. And that mayor, the mayor of Chicago, local and state officials all across the country have quite sensibly reminded people that terrorism is not automatically associated with Islam. At any rate, the president went over to the Pentagon a short while ago. You heard Terry Moran talk about that, and here's a brief excerpt of what he had to say when he was overseeing people there.
Coming here makes me sad on the one hand. It also makes me angry. And our country will, however, not be terrorists.
Mr. Bush said earlier today, when he was having a cabinet meeting earlier, I just want to check precisely on my notes, he urged the country to be patient and to be resolved, and made it clear, as did the Secretary of State, that there was going to be any retaliation until they found out who it was that they intended to retaliate against. And it will be made particularly more complicated if, as many senior officials have said, it is discovered that a government is involved or complicit in this in any way. But the United States undoubtedly has the capacity to respond. And now we're going to go to the Pentagon, and our Pentagon correspondent, who's worked very long hours, John McQueffey. John.
Peter, it should come as no surprise that planners in this building and elsewhere within the military complex are hard at work drawing up an entire menu for a military response.
The U.S. already has the firepower in the region to strike many targets simultaneously. Planes on land and aboard 2 aircraft carriers, long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles on other ships and submarines. And there are also ground troops that could be used in a more extreme response. It is not the firepower that is in question. It is the choice of targets. Who or what would the U.S. hit? How massive would the strikes be, and would an American response inflict real pain, crippling future attempts at terrorism, or would it just make the U.S. feel better? Secretary of State Colin Powell says the response must be broad-based.
It's not just a matter of going after the perpetrators, but it's going after and dealing with the sources of support that they have.
That doesn't mean to me that one just selects a facility or so here and there and puts a few cruise missiles on it in the middle of the night. That's we're way past that. We suffered an attack like Pearl Harbor yesterday. Someone is at war with us.
But too harsh a response, one that takes the lives of many innocent civilians, could easily backfire, with the U.S. losing the moral high ground.
We have to be careful to shape our response so that perception remains and so that we don't overnight be seen in some quarters as an aggressor.
Defense Secretary Rumsfeld today seemed to suggest whatever the U.S. does will not happen soon.
Anyone who thinks it's easy is wrong. I think that it will require a sustained and broadly based effort.
And the administration today began working on that broad-based response. Part of what they're doing is requesting an unusual level of support from NATO, Peter. They are asking not that the NATO allies would actually participate in any military action, but they want broad and very vocal public support from the European allies.
From WFAA-TV, Channel 8, the Spirit of Texas, this is News 8's continuing coverage of America Under Attack, the day after.
The American people need to know we're facing a different enemy than we have ever faced. This enemy hides in shadows and has no regard for human life. This will be a monumental struggle of good versus evil, but good will prevail.
It was an attack on freedom everywhere, a declaration of war. Those words tonight from President Bush, who vows to punish our enemy. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Scott Sams.
And I'm Gloria Campos. The day after America's worst terrorist attack, new details are rapidly unfolding.
The Bush administration said the White House and Air Force One may originally have been among the targets. The FBI says it has already identified several suspects in the attack. NATO gave its backing for a military response if those attacks were directed from abroad. And late today, the few floors of the Trade Center's South Tower that had remained standing collapsed. Smoke still lingers above the Manhattan skyline where the World Trade Towers once stood. Exhausted rescue workers continue to search through the wreckage in New York and in Washington. Though there are no confirmed numbers, the total loss of life is expected to be enormous. Saving lives is still the main focus.
First priority, obviously, is to try and rescue anybody that's there. There's nothing more important than that.
The FBI now believes it has identified the hijackers involved, a total of 12. Most appear to be Egyptian and Saudi nationals. President Bush vowed to find and punish all those responsible.
The deliberate and deadly attacks which were carried out yesterday against our country were more than acts of terror. They were acts of war.
Terrorists hijacked 4 jets and used them as missiles. 2 struck the World Trade Center. Another slammed into the Pentagon. But now Bush administration officials say the jet that hit the Pentagon may have been intended for the White House. They believe Air Force One was also a target. In Washington, political differences have been put aside. Members of Congress say the terrorists should know what they are up against.
By the time the 435 members of this body have spoken today, the world will have no doubt about who we are, what we will stand for, and what we will not stand for. And I yield my time.
Meanwhile, Secretary of State Colin Powell urged Americans to return to their jobs and to try to lead their normal lives in the wake of a national nightmare.
We cannot be a people who are afraid to live. We cannot be a people who will move away from a relatively open society. We cannot be a people who walk around terrified. We're Americans. We don't walk around terrified.
Rescuers in New York had to pull back their efforts this afternoon after the few floors of the South Tower that remained standing collapsed.
Channel 8's Brett Shipp is just across the river from that awful scene of destruction in New York, and he joins us live with more on how New Yorkers are coping with the scale and scope of this tragedy. Brett?
Hey, Gloria, just a couple of developing situations. Right now, we are for the first time in what is a day and a half now, hearing and seeing jets flying above New York City and in the air after being grounded after this terrible assault on Lower Manhattan in the Twin Towers in the World Trade Center yesterday. Earlier today, about an hour and a half ago, as we push into the scene of what is what used to be the Twin Towers, the South Tower, there was a secondary collapse about 4:30 our time, sending rescue workers rushing out of the way, trying to get to safety. No word of any injuries. Hopefully there was not. Hopefully they knew that that was a possibility. Also, they're being told that building number 5, that is 5 of 7 buildings, is on the verge of collapse. It's a smaller building, just a few stories high, but it is structurally unsound and possibly on the verge of collapse. More terror at the scene of yesterday's twin tragedy in Lower Manhattan. More trauma on top of what already is no doubt the most hideous and devastating assault ever on the U.S. mainland. I am now standing in Hoboken, New Jersey, just across the Hudson River from Manhattan, where we have been joined today by hundreds of stunned individuals who are seeing but not necessarily believing. Many of them were eyewitness to at least a portion of the chain of events, the crashing of one jet and then another into each of the Twin Towers, the resulting inferno, and then the terrifying collapse of the North Tower and then the South Tower. Some of the stunned observers today watched the terrorist attack from a distance. Others were too close for comfort.
You get used to seeing that stuff every day, thinking it's safe. And I got co-workers who were probably in the building when the plane hit, you know what I mean? So they probably saw it coming into the building. So I can imagine what the office is going to be like.
It was unbelievable. We all went to the windows to take a look, and before we knew it, the jumbo jet was coming right into the second building. Once we saw that, we evacuated our building because we weren't sure what was happening.
Did you think terroristic attack
right away?
Immediately?
Right away.
And while the incident has shut down Lower Manhattan, and the rescue and recovery efforts will no doubt be both grim and agonizingly slow, New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani implored all of the residents of New York City today to pick themselves back up, to get back to work as soon as possible. Students will be going back to New York City schools tomorrow. Many, if not most, of the bridges leading into Manhattan have been reopened tonight, and we're told that Wall Street, despite the devastation down near the World Trade Center, will reopen either Friday or possibly Monday. And as we reported, the planes are back up in the air, and that is a good sign, especially when they have the haunting reminder of the billowing smoke behind me and the gaping hole in the Manhattan skyline to look at for some time to come. Gloria, Scott?
Thank you very much. Brett Shipp reporting from New Jersey, right across from New York City. The FBI confirmed today that part of its investigation has turned toward North Texas.
Agents are searching for a former Arlington clerk. Channel 8's Valerie Williams joins us now from the newsroom with more on this. Valerie, are they calling this man a suspect?
Well, Scott, not at this point. The man that the FBI is looking for is the former imam, or religious leader of the Arlington Mosque. He's 40-year-old Motaz al-Halak. Out of the mosque earlier this year for theological reasons. All the FBI is saying at this point is that they want to talk with him. Federal prosecutors have previously identified al-Halak as a key contact in Osama bin Laden's terrorist organization. Al-Halak has steadfastly denied knowing bin Laden or having any connection with him. In addition to al-Halak, authorities tell News 8 that they also want to talk with a woman named Eha al-Shari. Al-Shari's husband has been identified as one of the alleged terrorists who died in Monday's attacks. Authorities do not call her a suspect. They say they simply want to talk with her. 3 other men authorities have identified to News 8 as being terrorists are Anad Shah of Saudi Arabia. He was allegedly living in New Jersey before dying aboard one of the planes, as was Hani Hajur. The 3rd alleged terrorist identified by authorities as Assem Atta. At today's news conference, the FBI declined to comment on these men. Danny Deffenbaugh, the special agent in charge, did say that Motaz al-Halak has not been seen in 3 days. Now, some of the alleged terrorist authorities tell us came into the country between April and June. We have no way of confirming if they were ever in the North Texas area before the deadly attacks. Now, the FBI has released a new national tips line number. That number is 1-866-483-5137. Again, that number is 1-866-483-5137. They say if you have any information, to please call them on that number.
Valerie in the newsroom, thank you very much.
Sure.
Now, because the initial suspects are from the Middle East, some people are right now suspicious of some people from that region.
A possible local connection to terrorism only heightened security concerns right here in North Texas. A combination of both resulted in an evacuation of an area around Lincoln Plaza in downtown Dallas today. And Channel 8's Janet St. James joins us now to tell us about that. Janet?
Well, this city is on high alert, meaning there are more police, more FBI, more security patrolling the streets below us. Officers have been overwhelmed with troubling phone calls from people looking for terrorism amongst us. So when some witnesses saw what they thought was something dangerously suspicious near the 45-story building that used to house Vice President Dick Cheney's Halliburton office, police didn't take any chances.
In seconds, a suspicious package in a parked car became an all-out bomb scare.
Well, we just got some concerns here at this corner.
Thousands of people evacuated from the Lincoln Tower streamed into the streets. No one asked many questions. Bomb was a big enough word.
Is that enough information for you?
That's enough information for me after yesterday, yes. Heart just started to race, and I just wanted to get out as soon as I could.
Witnesses say they saw several Middle Eastern men allegedly videotaping the skyscraper, then leave a package in the front seat. Dozens of police officers and fire engines converged on the scene to check out that car and get the people out.
Students, stay with your teachers.
More than 700 school children at the First Baptist Academy were evacuated to Thanksgiving Square, and people at the YMCA were literally pulled away from workouts and showers with little more than shorts to wear.
Threw my workout stuff back on and ran out.
Somewhere within that tall high-rise, another drama was unfolding. 15 people were reportedly stuck in an elevator.
Just tell the people they're going to have to stay in the elevator and stay away from the doors until we're escorted in, and we will get them off.
On the ground, a moon-suited member of the bomb squad cautiously approached the tan car, gingerly removing several bags and boxes from within. Onlookers held their breath. After a 3-hour ordeal, it all ended peacefully with a few sacks of stuff.
Knick-knack items.
Knick-knack items?
Like from a convenience store, dollar items.
A plastic American flag and a newspaper with a War at Home headline. A War Dallas emergency crews were glad they didn't have to fight today.
And officials say the men detained in this case did indeed have legitimate reasons to be where they were. But it certainly illustrates that police are taking every call very seriously. This is Janet St. James reporting live from downtown Dallas. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Janet. Well, a big question hanging over the day, when will the airlines take to the skies again?
Then came word that only flights that were diverted yesterday could finish their journeys. All other planes remain grounded. We have several crews covering our airports for you today. Don Wall and Byron Harris are at DFW International. Cynthia Vega is at Dallas Love Field. We're going to begin with Don Wall.
Hello, Scott. It's very quiet here at DFW Airport. In fact, the ticket counter behind me appears now to be closed. But there were people here earlier today trying to rebook flights. Of course, not flights for today. We did hear from some ground crew members that a few planes have taken off, apparently to be repositioned at other airports with FAA approval and with no passengers on board. So far today, no passengers are flying in or out of DFW.
When Terminal C opened at noon, there was a rush of passengers hoping to take off. But the planes weren't going anywhere. Nancy McKinney was told she won't be able to fly back to Hartford, Connecticut until Friday.
Friday morning, so I got to go back to the hotel and stay another couple days.
Is that okay?
You don't have any choice. It has to be okay. At least we're alive. You know, at least we're alive. When you think of what some people are dealing with, you don't want to complain.
Frances Saffel spent the day waiting for family members to drive all the way from Shreveport, Louisiana to pick her up and then drive back to Shreveport.
There's no buses running, no trains running, no airplanes running, so what am I going to do, get out there and hitchhike?
Even though the entire departure schedule was canceled, security everywhere was tight. Bomb-sniffing dogs were used for security sweeps. Police cars patrolled constantly. This man got a ticket and nearly got towed for leaving his car unattended. The American Airlines care team trying to get to New York and Washington to counsel victims did go through security and IDs were checked, but a pocket knife was allowed to go through.
No, I mean, if I can't get out tonight, you're going to do.
Keith Bird is the chancellor for the Kentucky Community College System. He says this delay is completely different than delays related to bad weather.
With this, it's different. I mean, we know what's happened to our country. I mean, we're all touched in some way, so it's part of its patience and understanding that there are other people in far more difficult situations than us. So it's a different feeling I've ever had before being held up for these things. And I fly a lot.
A lot of plans are being made for when operations resume. For more on that, here's Channel 8's Byron Harris.
Thanks, Don. Now, this may look innocent enough. It costs about $2, but it really isn't so innocent at all. It's a box cutter, and it's one of the weapons the FBI says was used in yesterday's hijackings. These are some of the, more than ever, airports will be looking for anything that could be a weapon or people who might use one, and they won't stop at just physical inspection.
Knife this small will not be allowed past the security checkpoint or on the airplane. Be prepared for extensive questioning. Have your photo identification ready. Be prepared for possible multiple and longer screening processes.
Patience is the order of the day, but safety is our priority one.
These are some of the security improvements at DFW. There'll be no curbside check-in. No one will be allowed beyond security checkpoints. 1 hour parking will be closed, and there'll be absolutely no unattended vehicles. Now, just minutes ago, the airport announced that they're not even going to allow metal knives in the concession areas. So that's how strict things are getting here. Now, as we look out behind the airport behind us, we can start to see a little activity, some baggage carts and so on. And this afternoon, the airport announced that it will allow people who have their cars parked here 2 days free parking. That's it from DFW. For now, this is Byron Harris, live.
Byron, thank you very much. Don Wall as well. Now let's get a check from what's going on at Dallas Love Field.
And we'll find Channel 8 Cynthia Vega there with our report. Cynthia?
Right now, it is so quiet and deserted here. It is almost eerie. But the airport officials remind us that technically Love Field is open. But until they get the okay from the FAA, all planes will remain grounded.
I'm afraid of is that they're getting their wish. They're shutting the country down.
It's day 2 for traveler Ken Baker, stranded in a city he never expected to visit.
My problems are small right now compared to what's going on in New York and Washington, so I guess I really can't complain. I'm still here.
Baker's flight from Tampa to Albuquerque was one of several diverted to Dallas yesterday in the midst of terrorist attacks. Stranded air passengers spent the night at local hotels. hoping to get back on track aboard scheduled flights today, only to find out
we have shut down operations for the full day.
all flights are canceled without explanation. Even airport officials seem surprised, having completed security sweeps early this morning.
We have gone through and swept all the concourses, the terminals. We've had bomb sniffing dogs out, so those things have been taken care of.
We're going to go ahead and process you individually to send you back to the hotels.
Passengers face the news of checking into hotels once again.
Another night in Dallas. I just wish I knew where to go.
Ken Baker need not go far. Ready advice is just a few feet away from a young traveler seasoned beyond his years. Gary Potter spent last night lounging at the hotel pool.
When I came from the pool, I just sit down and relax a little bit, and that's all I have to say.
And once flights do resume here at Love Field, there will be many security measures in place here as well as at DFW. No curbside parking, no curbside check-in, no longer will there be temporary parking. But you will be asked a lot of questions. So if you do have a flight scheduled, once they do resume here, the airport officials remind you to get here now 2 hours early. Live at Love Field, I'm Cynthia Vega. Back to you.
Thank you, Cynthia. The lines usually found at Love Field and DFW ticket counters look like they just picked up and moved to the Greyhound bus station in downtown Dallas.
That's right. Hundreds of travelers holding airline tickets are trying to reach their destinations now by bus. Many of them are business travelers who told us it was their first time to travel by bus. Some tried to take care of some business during the wait. Others pulled out some reading material. One New York resident said that mapping out his trip was like chasing a prize in one of those reality-based TV shows.
36-hour bus ride to Philadelphia, and then I'll figure out bus or train from Philly into New York.
I've got some business that I can take care of. Don't expect to do much of it. Just got my mind full of grieving for all of the people that, you know, I feel pretty fortunate that I was on a plane in the other direction.
While the bus trip will take these travelers hours longer than a plane flight, most said their own inconvenience was not worth mentioning compared to the tragedy that so many others have suffered.
Closed airspace means closed airspace. One North Texas private pilot found out after a military escort forced him to make a quick landing. Tom Tweeddale's Piper Cherokee sits near the airstrip in his Denton County neighborhood where 2 F-16s helped him land this morning. The instructor, with more than 40,000 flight hours, took up a student for a lesson just after 11 a.m., thinking the airspace had been reopened. He never entered controlled airspace, so never had to talk with a controller. Carol and Norman Akins sure knew those jets were over their garden outside Argyle.
There's nothing here.
Really serious. They were chasing, they were circling.
I could do nothing but grab my little dog and hunker down to the ground. It scared me to death when I saw those rockets.
Tweeddale told News 8 he expects to hear from the FAA and would not have jeopardized his career or anyone's safety. He says he made an honest mistake.
Now, yesterday's attack caused evacuations in downtown Dallas, which left the area looking pretty much like a ghost town during what was supposed to be rush hour last night.
Channel 8's Chris Heimbaugh was up early this morning as many people returned to work. So, Chris, what was the mood then?
Well, I think that the word that most best describes the way people are feeling might be anxious. Another word might be vulnerable. Nonetheless, those feelings did not keep people from returning to work and going up into their offices in the sky, but their thoughts were squarely on yesterday's attack.
It appeared like most any other downtown morning. Plenty of traffic on the street, plenty of traffic going in the doors. But this morning was different. The carnage of the day before is very much on everyone's mind, especially in the city's tallest building, 72 stories high.
This could have been us very easily. And you don't know how many planes were up there flying around.
And you're on what floor?
51, Bank of America.
Yesterday, many of these high-rises were evacuated. Today feels safer.
No serious concern for safety, but at the same time, I'm sure there are a lot of people at the World Trade Center felt that way when they went to work yesterday morning. You just never know. There's a potential vulnerability, and you just accept it.
Police were very visible across downtown.
You have your city ID?
And at Dallas City Hall, security was tighter than normal for today's council meeting.
Almighty God and Father, we just thank you that we know that you love us.
Prayers were offered for victims of the tragedy and for America. And Mayor Kirk urged people to focus on what's important.
And at times like this, I hope all of us realize just how petty sometimes our differences can be when we are reminded that at the end of the day, what we really cherish the most are our families, our freedom, and our faith.
And that's what many are trying to do, including those who lost loved ones. Reverend Lewis Hawkins' cousin died when the towers collapsed. He prays something good will come from this.
It's going to make us a better people. You know, it's going to make us people that are going to love each other, I hope.
Feelings today include anxiety, anger, grief, and determination.
We cannot drop our guard by any means. We can't change a thing. You know, we have to be strong. We're America.
So the downtown rush is getting back to normal, with a lingering sense that nothing may really ever be normal again.
Now, an interesting note on traffic. Several people commented that it seemed a bit lighter than usual today, and that may be because not everyone has returned to work. But they also noticed that, well, it wasn't quite so rushed, quite so hectic. There weren't quite so many horn honks. In short, people seem to be a bit more patient with one another. Live in downtown Dallas, Chris Heinbaugh, Channel 8 News.
That's good to hear. Thank you, Chris. At any time now, the search and rescue team from Texas will be leaving College Station for New York.
A number of North Texans are going to be on board. Channel 8's Shelley Koffler joins us now from their staging site with more on how they plan to help in the aftermath of this tragedy. Shelley.
Well, Scott, the team that's assembled here is known as Texas Task Force 1. These men and women will primarily be deployed near the World Trade Center. Their job will be to search through all of that debris and hopefully find some survivors. These team members come from across the state. They will be operating under the direction of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Administration. Now, they have actually been here since 5 o'clock last night, and their plane still hasn't come to take them to New York. They're getting a little anxious. They say they want to join in this effort in New York, for which they are well trained.
We're totally self-sufficient for 72 hours.
73 firefighters, doctors, search and rescue specialists from across Texas, traveling with 60,000 pounds of equipment.
We have received our official activation orders.
This is Task Force 1, a response crew specializing in urban disasters. It was created in 1997 following the Oklahoma City bombing.
This is a rescue mission until we're officially pulled off and told otherwise.
Fort Worth Fire Battalion Chief Jay Peacock is the task force leader. Like everyone here, he believes the mission ahead will change his life forever. Saying goodbye to his family was tough.
I tell them Dad loved them and goodbye, and I'll be safe. For them to stay safe, and you know, we'll return as quick as we can.
The Texans are expected to deploy for 10 days. Euless computer programmer Patrick Gilliland and his border collie Pepe will be among those searching the gigantic piles of debris.
He is trained to search independently from me so that I can send him up on a rubble pile, and when he finds live human scent, he will indicate so by barking.
Some of the most anxious yet hopeful professionals here are firemen. They know hundreds of their New York brethren may have perished in the explosive fires. They're bracing for what they will find.
When it's going to hit us the worst is when we see one of our own. We start coming on a piece of bunker gear, a helmet, as we're digging through the rubble.
Yet no one here is talking about the bodies they'll find. They're talking about the lives they may save. That includes some firefighters from the New York area. They were stranded here at the fire training school. They can't wait to get home.
There is people still alive in there. There's no doubt they're still alive in there. And if we can get there, we can get them out.
At this hour, some of the men and women who are here are just a little frustrated because they thought by this hour they would already be in New York. They would be using some of these specialized skills and using their training, which they have dedicated so much time to. Apparently, the problem, we are told, is in New York. The coordination on the ground there is lacking somewhat. They really don't know exactly how they would deploy these people if they were there right now. So until they work all of that out in New York, they're going to ask these people to stand by. We are told, however, that at some point in time, probably tomorrow, they will take off for New York and will begin in that search and rescue effort near the World Trade Center. Reporting live at College Station, I'm Shelley Koffler. Back to you.
Shelley, thank you very much. There will be people from all over the country going in to help. Hundreds of people of all faiths united in prayer today on the lawn of the state capitol.
The best we can do at this moment is to pray.
Governor Rick Perry opened the ceremony. Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Unitarians, Hindus, they all stood together in a show of spiritual strength in the wake of the terrorist attacks. They prayed for the victims, for their families, for rescue workers, for government officials, and they prayed for peace.
And here in North Texas, students at the University of Texas at Dallas came together to reflect on yesterday's tragedy. Scores of students held hands and prayed silently for those who died and those who are left to mourn. A Muslim student says she initially was afraid to attend the prayer service after hearing stories of hatred against Muslims in light of the terrorist attacks.
As a Muslim, I'd just like to say that, you know, there are Muslims that are being accused right now of committing that tragedy, but Islam does not condone that whatsoever, and a true Muslim would not do so.
The university president encouraged the students to forge ahead, saying great nations and great people get up and face oncoming challenges.
Well, many Texans are not shy about expressing their opinions on this terrorist act that has taken so many lives.
Here's what just a few North Texans we met today had to say.
I really hate to see that that it had to come to this, that lives were lost. But there again, if they trust in God, I believe that He will come through. Our country will be victorious, and that everything will be as it should be.
I think it's horrible. I mean, people are cold-hearted. I don't know how anyone could do that.
Unfortunately, America did get a big black eye over this, and we are the most powerful nation in the world, and there has to be some sort of retaliation in order to make sure that this doesn't happen again and won't be stood for.
Well, he just kills you. Heck, I mean, you have a weird feeling inside, you know? You just feel like the day John Kennedy got killed.
I think that we should definitely get who is responsible and bring them to justice.
I haven't kept up on it.
Differing opinions, that's just a small example of the freedom Americans enjoy.
A number of young people have told us over the past 2 days that this tragic event helps them understand how their grandparents felt about Pearl Harbor. Today on the SMU campus, students put their feelings into words in journals and on tablecloths that will be kept for future generations to read. They say it also helps with healing.
It was kind of cathartic to do it because there's been all these emotions that have been felt by everyone over the last 24 hours. And just to get it on paper is kind of like purging yourself of all the feelings that are inside.
These journals are going to be placed in the SMU archives for future students to read. Someday they'll know how their parents or grandparents felt about the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center and on the Pentagon. These feelings of grief, sadness, and anger can be overwhelming when a tragedy like this occurs.
So just how are we as individuals and as a nation supposed to cope? Joining us now is psychologist Karen Sitterly with UT Southwestern Medical School. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sitterly. Obviously, there's a whole wide range of emotions, as we've seen from some of the people, some of our viewers here in North Texas. What kind of advice would you offer to someone how to maybe talk about those feelings or bring those feelings out?
Well, I think there are a whole range of victims in this type of tragedy, and they range from those closest to being involved at ground zero to the family members of survivors or those who lost family members to those of us as a nation as we sit and watch this. And there's a wide range of emotions that we all have depending on what our own experience is. And whether we've lost someone in this tragedy. And I think what people have to do is really try to talk about their feelings about this. One of the, I think all of us have been experiencing in the last 24 hours is a real sense of speechlessness at this type of horror. It's hard to even find words to express the scope of the emotion and the disbelief that we have. But it helps to do that. And whether it's talking with a loved one, your husband or wife, a good friend, a member of the clergy, or a mental health professional, but to clearly express in words your feelings, just as those students at SMU were trying to do. It's those kind of activities.
Words that come to mind immediately first is shock, then fear, anger, frustration. You counseled a number of families and rescue workers in Oklahoma City. Same kind of thing?
Definitely the same kind of thing in the sense that the nature of this tragedy is a terrorist bombing or terrorist act, which means we're not talking about an act of God or a natural disaster. We're talking about horror that's of human design, and it's clearly senseless, and it's a premeditated act of murder. And that influences how people feel about it. And one of the emotions you mentioned is anger, and I think we see a lot more of that following these kind of senseless tragedies.
Well, we obviously have a lot of sympathy and cannot imagine the scope of the depth of hurt that the people who lost loved ones in this tragedy have suffered. But how about rescue workers? We have heard from the Oklahoma City bombing that rescue workers there are still having to deal with the impact of the post-traumatic stress, I guess, of a situation like this.
Well, that's true, and we know that from following them as well as what we learned while they were there. One of the things is that when another bombing like this occurs, it of course triggers or stirs up feelings and memories from, say, the Oklahoma City bombing. But the rescue workers involved in this type of rescue have a particularly difficult task. Again, there will be a very long, protracted rescue effort. As we start to see, there may be less and less recovery, and all of that influences their feelings about it as they go through the rubble and the gruesome sights and images that they have to deal with.
Briefly, does it ever go away? Do the feelings ever go away?
Well, yes and no. I think these are the kind of, they are images that will stay with you forever, but hopefully they will fade over time. But I think it takes a long time.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Karen Sitterly with UT Southwestern Medical Center, so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Flags continue to fly at half-staff across North Texas and the nation.
You're looking at a live picture of Dallas City Hall. Scenes like these will become much more common in the coming days. As a matter of fact, there's been a rush on American flags at area stores. Retailers say they're selling out quickly ever since the attacks yesterday.
Banks and businesses here in North Texas and across the country opened again today.
What effect the terrorist attacks will have on consumers and the economy still isn't known. Channel 8's Brad Watson joins us now with more on the concern that the economy will be a terrorist victim as well. Brad?
Scott and Gloria, consumers and their increasing spending have been propping up this sputtering economy this year. As businesses try to get back to normal today here in downtown Dallas and across North Texas, the concern is that consumers are going to cut back on some of this spending, sending the economy into a recession.
At the Bank of America building in downtown Dallas, bank employees who left the skyscraper uneasy after the attacks returned for business.
But everyone was very determined really not to let this set us back and be here for our customers in the way that they need us currently.
The government and Federal Reserve assured people the banking system remains solid and open, and it is, although some depositors had doubts.
After looking at the devastating story that we saw yesterday, I was not sure whether it's going to be open.
So people can get to their money, but what will they do with it? As North Texas businesses opened on the first day after the terrorist attacks, no one knew. In the second quarter of this year, while the economy grew at less than 1%, consumer spending jumped by 2.5%. Economists say consumers, like those at this North Dallas Target store, keep the economy from tipping into a recession because they're still buying. But will they change their ways because of terrorism? Some will.
Yes, I will. Definitely. To see what's going to happen with the economy and on interest rates, how it's going to affect the public.
Others won't.
We're still going to shop just as normal. I just think that these attacks are just random acts of violence, and I know that the government is going to do whatever's possible to take care of everything.
I think we have to maintain the American lifestyle as best we can, and not let the terrorists destroy our way of life.
History reassures consumers and investors that the American economy bounces back from national tragedies. For example, in December 1941, the month Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, the stock market declined 4.6% before rebounding. But it's dropped further for reasons other than national security since then. The day President Kennedy was assassinated in November 1963, the market dropped 2.8%. But the next trading day went up 4%. Mark Reingenum is the director of SMU's Finance Institute.
And I think the long term is that the markets tend to move up, and that these, the economic engines of the economy is strong and overcomes natural and man-made disasters.
Now, the stock markets won't open again tomorrow for the third straight day. They may open again on Friday, but no later than Monday. This is the longest break in trading since the outset of World War I in 1914. What kind of reaction we see when the markets finally do open, whether it's panic or confidence, will be important for the months ahead. Brad Watson, Channel 8 News, reporting live in downtown Dallas. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Brad. Now, before we continue our local coverage, we'd like to go back to the live coverage in Washington, where there is a prayer service going on right now.
All the leaders of Congress in Washington, let's listen.
Amen. And now there will be the presentation of the colors, the Star-Spangled Banner, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the retiring of the colors.
in the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A great psalm of comfort and courage is the 46th Psalm. It gives us personal hope and reassures our nation that God is in charge.
There you got a brief glimpse of a prayer service that was just beginning in the United States Capitol. Members of Congress attending.
And the flag's still standing. There has been much talk since yesterday's attack on how much it might change our country.
From now on, Americans will be forced to worry about the possibility of a major terrorist attack. But they would do well to remember the nation has survived tough times before. Channel 8's Gary Reeves reports.
For the second straight day, the skies were clear of planes and the future clouded with the dusty fallout of America under siege. And all around there are signs and symbols of just how much has changed.
You got your ID?
Yeah, it's in There's so much extra security in our downtowns, at our federal buildings, even City Hall, we can actually watch as our freedoms are curtailed. People normally free to roam Dallas City Hall were turned away because they didn't have proper ID. And from our headlines and our top leaders, words of war, unheard in more than a decade.
American people have a clear understanding that this is a war. It's the way they see it. You can't see it any other way, whether legally that is correct or not.
All we heard was a big blast from the whole volume. And it's a different kind of war, with an enemy who hides among us, willing to kill himself in order to kill the maximum number of innocents. It's left our most innocent, our children and young adults, who have never known the fear of war, stunned and confused.
And a lot of individuals are saying this looks just like an image from World War II or something from Independence Day. And it's a shocking thought. It's a very frightening thought for everyone.
For these young people, perhaps for all of us, a little history might help. This nation was founded in war, and more than 1 million have died to allow this current generation to know only peace. Through the 60s and 70s, it was Vietnam. 500,000 drafted, 57,000 young men died there. A generation later, World War II claimed 300,000 American lives. World War I took 126,000 more. The men who survived Pearl Harbor, the last large-scale attack on American soil, survived all of that. Now they remind us we will survive too.
I hope we can get 90% as unified as we were back then in those days, you know, because, and I think this episode today is going to unify the population of our country.
Still, much is different today, and it's not all bad. Blood drives show just how many Americans are ready to sacrifice. And in Dallas today, Christians, Muslims, and Jews spoke with one voice.
We decry all bigotry, racism, any anti-Semitism, whether it is expressed against Arabs, Jews, Muslims, or any others on our soil.
Preachers and priests, imams and rabbis are all praying together that this tragedy will help us all to come together. It's a process that's already begun. The question now is, how long will it last? Gary Reeves, Channel 8 News.
Well, as we have seen since yesterday's attacks, North Texans have donated an unprecedented amount of blood.
They sure have. Crowds have been so large that some donors are waiting for hours just to roll up their sleeves. Channel 8's Jim Douglas has been covering that story for us, and he's at the Will Rogers Memorial Center in Fort Worth with more on today's blood drives. Jim?
Scott, look over here. There are about 20 beds that have been set up, and all of them are occupied just as they have been all day long. And then as we look around the rest of the Will Rogers Center here, we see that there are about another 150 people or so who are waiting. They've been pouring through the doors all day long, some of them waiting 5 or 6 days, really giving up their whole day to come down here and donate blood. And I'm going to just drop in on one right now who's getting ready to get the needle here. Tell me why you came down here, ma'am.
I just felt like it was about the only thing I could do from here.
It's almost a symbolic gesture, like raising the flag in a sense.
I would think so, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. How long did you have to wait?
Oh, it wasn't that long, really. Maybe an hour or so.
Okay.
It didn't seem that long.
You're one of the lucky ones. Thank you very much. There are some volunteers who have come down here to donate blood, and they ended up staying all day, handing out snacks, getting forms filled out, entertaining kids with balloon shapes and different things like that. It really is amazing. Now, yesterday, Carter Blood Care collected about 3,000 pints of blood between Dallas and Fort Worth and other centers. Today, they expect to get about 2,500 more. Now, on a normal day, they would only get about 500. This is more blood than has ever been collected at one time here. So much blood that Carter Blood Care is planning on bringing in portable storage units to store it all, refrigerated units. But they do say that all of that blood will be used. It won't necessarily go to the victims in New York and Washington, but it will be used. So there is another chance to donate tomorrow from 11 to 8 right here at the Will Rogers Memorial Center. However, Carter Blood Care Centers point out that even if you donate next week or 2 weeks from now or 2 months from now, it will be just as important, if not more so. I'm Jim Douglas reporting live from Fort Worth, and now Scott and Gloria, back to you.
Jim, thank you very much. Now, there's another way that people can help the victims of these terrorist attacks.
Channel 8's Troy Dungan joins us now to tell us about a special relief drive. Troy?
Thanks, Gloria. Yes, I started talking to you last night about this Spirit of America WFAA relief fund for the victims of the terrorist attacks. You take your money to Chase Bank, you make your check out to the American Red Cross, and now you just have to say American Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund. If you put that number on it I gave you last night, that's fine, but now you don't have to remember the number. American Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund, that'll get the money directly to the American Red Cross in New York and Washington, D.C., and aid these victims and their families. Now, you want to know how we're doing about this, right? I mean, you always want to know how we're doing when you ask for somebody to give something. Well, Chase Bank tells me the response has been very good at Chase locations around Dallas-Fort Worth. Numbers? No, I don't have numbers for you. This is not a telethon. There's no goal. We just need all we can get, because you've seen the destruction. You know how many families have been really just tragedized by this situation. So please remember, the WFAA Spirit of America Relief Fund for victims of terrorist attacks, and that's checks made to American Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund. Take them to your Chase Bank in the area where you live, and it'll get to you. Now, we haven't talked about the weather because the weather's been beautiful. There is a tropical situation brewing in the Gulf, and if that turns into a tropical storm, we'll let you know, but that's not going to be affecting us. We'll bring you some weather when weather is important. Right now, we've been doing what's important. See you at 10.
All right. Thanks a lot, Troy. And before we leave you, we'd like to tell you that, you know, the airports have been closed all over the country. The first flight that will land at DFW International Airport tonight will come at 11:23. It's coming from London Gatwick. So that will signal the opening of the airport at DFW.
And we will continue to cover this story for you nationally and locally here on Channel 8. It's 6:50 now, 85 degrees, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. Also in the bottom right-hand corner, WFAA.com. You can get more information about all of this on WFAA.com.
And now let's rejoin ABC News' continuous coverage of the tragedies in the East Coast. Thank you for joining us.
You've been watching News 8's continuing coverage of America Under Attack, the day after. Stay with News 8 for all the latest developments. We now rejoin ABC News.
And how do we gain this power? Only by asking God for His help. By opening our hearts can we receive God's grace and His all-powerful Spirit. God spoke in Jeremiah, "Call to me, and I will answer you, and show you great and mighty things which you do not know." God can show us the way, if we will but ask. We cannot explain what's happened. We don't have that capacity. Then how can we console those who've suffered so much through the loss of friends and loved ones? Yes, our hearts go out to them, but it's not enough for them or for us. The message again is to turn to God. He alone has the answers.
That is Senator John Kyle of Arizona there at the prayer vigil in New York, and we've clearly lost the feed to the Capitol building, a prayer vigil which the House and the Senate agreed they would hold tonight, held in the rotunda, as you could probably see. And not the end of the day, by any means, for the members of the House and the members of the Senate, or for any of the members of the political leadership in the country, but certainly a fitting end to the formal day in the U.S. Capitol today, where not too long ago Senator Tom Daschle, the Democratic leader in the Senate, told us members still do in some ways feel vulnerable, as people do in many parts of the country. And our coverage of this is going to continue on ABC News throughout the night. But to end this rather unusually lengthy edition of World News Tonight, let us first and finally on this segment of the broadcast, provide you with some of the sights and the sounds of the day here and everywhere.
Heavy debris. We're really just on top of the pile. We can't even, there's just a lot of crevices and holes, things you can look down into. You really can't see. The visibility is real poor. A lot of smoke, a lot of heat coming off of the debris.
Here's my son with my little granddaughter. My son is Lloyd Rosenberg. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald in Tower 1 on the 102nd floor, and I'm begging the people that would know anything, please get in touch with me.
We just have in our head that he's unconscious. His ID is down in smoke right now, I guess, right? And that he's somewhere in a hospital unconscious or on Liberty Island. I mean, I refuse at this point to give up.
Found 2 Port Authority workers were trapped. We got one out alive about 1 o'clock this morning, and then we got another one out about 5:30 this morning.
Any more regulators? Got any more regulators? Non-rebreathers? I know 2 tanks.
The damage is incalculable. But, you know, one human life is worth more than all that damage put together.
We've been in hospitals all day since yesterday, so if anybody could help us, there he is again. Sean.
He started yesterday to work.
Yesterday was his first day back.
Yeah, first day. And he don't come back no more to the house.
You know, we still have hope for him, but if they were up in the building with the size of that fall and the fire and the smoke, it doesn't look good for them.
And this building's unstable.
It's unstable.
Go guys, come on. You're right. Oh, shit.
Well, I said that that final collection of images from the day would be here, there, and everywhere. And of course, what I should have said was here in New York City and there at the Pentagon outside Washington, and of course at the crash site in Pennsylvania. That is here for everybody in the United States today. I hope in the last hour of this special edition of World News Tonight we've been able to summarize the events of the day and bring you up to date with the investigation, with America's connections with the rest of the world, with the search which continues in New York and at the Pentagon as well, and at all three of those crime seats and in other places around the country. All of the investigative agencies of the United States are at work, and as you heard in the course of the last hour and you've heard today, there has been some progress made in identifying the terrorists on board the aircraft and perhaps at least getting for questioning people who may have been connected with them in the United States. So our coverage will continue, but for now, that is World News Tonight. Hello again, everybody. I'm Peter Jennings at ABC News headquarters in New York, and that is what it looks like by night. And our special report, which began just before 9 o'clock yesterday morning, continues, and our coverage of this crisis for the United States, and a crisis which has engulfed so many other people in so many other parts of the world in one way or the other, will continue. We said just a short while ago that the psychology of darkness clearly changes things on the ground in some respects, but it also makes it dramatically clear and actually more visible than it is sometimes in the daytime, the intensity of the search and rescue operation in Lower Manhattan as they move rubble so that the search for survivors can continue. And we and other news agencies and all sorts of agencies of government at all levels today have in some respects been conveyor belts for queries and for information, and certainly, as we said more than 24 hours ago, for the American people at large to gather, stay close by their television sets and their radios, of course, and share in the continuing investigation of not what happened here, because we all know, but why it happened here and who did it and who is going to survive it. So we continue. And first I want to go to my colleague ABC's Charles Gibson, who's also here at ABC News headquarters, to pick up on parts of the day we may have missed in the last couple of hours. Charlie?
Well, Peter, you've spent the last hour and a half in a special edition of World News Tonight trying to sum up where we stand, and for those who couldn't watch all of it with some trepidation and a sense of inadequacy, I will try to sum it up in 2.5 minutes to try to get some sense of where we are. And there's a lot of places where you could start today. You could start with the investigation. You could start with the fact that there are some indications from Washington that the Pentagon was not the intended target of the plane that crashed there. But I think the proper place to start is right at the recovery zone around the World Trade Center, because, as you have been pointing out in the last few minutes, there is the threat that another building could go down. There are actually two that they're worried about. One, Liberty Plaza. Somebody said there's a buckle in the building. It could go down. Others are saying they're really most worried about the Millennium Hotel. But we are in a situation where another building could go down in the World Trade Center site. So let's start there.
Late this afternoon, there were the frightening indications that yet a fourth building might be near collapse in downtown Manhattan, another building structurally weakened by the collapse of the World Trade Towers. Touring the devastated site today, New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani echoed the thoughts of every stunned American.
When you look up there and you don't see the World Trade Center, it's unbelievable.
One searcher poignantly said, "I never expected to see the World Trade Center go by me in the back of a truck." So far, 55 civilians have been confirmed dead, 1,700 injured, although the final toll is expected to go much, much higher, the final toll of casualties. Among those feared dead, 259 missing firemen, New York policemen, and Port Authority police, all heroes who risked their lives in the early minutes of the crisis.
The deliberate and deadly attacks which were carried out yesterday against our country were more than acts of terror. They were acts of war.
As for who is responsible, all leads seem to point to suspected terrorist Osama bin Laden. There was a startling announcement from Washington today that the Pentagon, which of course was hit by one of the hijacked jetliners, may not have been an intended target.
Our government has credible evidence that the White House and Air Force One were targets.
Each of the 4 planes hijacked, says Ashcroft, was taken over by between 3 and 6 hijackers armed with knives and box cutters. So far, there have been no suspects arrested, but many people have been detained, held as part of a spreading investigation. Police in riot gear searched a hotel in downtown Boston. Other police served search warrants on homes in Florida looking for information. Sadly, today, people gathered outside hospitals. Without a lot of hope, they were simply holding up pictures of missing loved ones on the slim, very slim chance someone had seen them.
She has 2 daughters, and we haven't heard no response from her, nothing.
Amazingly, earlier today, several people were pulled out of the rubble of the World Trade Center alive. An inspiring sight also came today. People on the periphery of the World Trade Center site were applauding, cheering the rescuers.
Just some of the snapshots that have made up this second day now after the tragedy. Peter?
Thank you, Charlie. I know you just can't summarize too often, and every time you do, for which we're grateful, we get another glimpse of both tragedy and of encouragement. And we've seen so many symbols today, so many examples today here in New York City and across the country, including that wonderful moment at the Pentagon when firefighters there unveiled an enormous American flag so that President Bush could see it. You've seen that kind of encouragement and patriotism all across the country today. We've had tremendous help in the last couple of days from Jerry Hauer, who was with us again this evening. Jerry was the man who helped to set up the Office of Emergency Management for New York City without ever imagining in your wildest dreams that this is what it was going to have to deal with. And Jerry, can we just take some photographs of the scene? Because I think that one of the things that we have not done very well in the last few hours is to give people in other parts of the country a real geographical sense of what is happening down there. And Jerry, I know as you watch this, you keep saying, well, there is the Office of Emergency Management, which I set up and is part of rubble. So as we look down at this staging zone north of the World Trade Towers, where, for example, was the Office of Emergency Management, and where is One Liberty Plaza, which we're so concerned about collapsing at the moment?
Well, there, Peter, at both ends of the operation, the Office of Emergency Management, or 7 World Trade Center, was on the north side. The World Trade Center, the 2 towers sat in the middle, and the Millennium Hotel is to the east of the World Trade Center, and the tower that they're concerned about now, One Liberty Plaza, is just south. Here's, as you can see on that map, the 7 World Trade is the northern part looking up. As you look across to Jersey, One Liberty Plaza is to the south there. The concern now is for One Liberty Plaza. You've got to set the stage by recognizing there's a very aggressive effort going on to try and find people at the site. They had the good fortune this morning of finding some people alive. These people are looking very aggressively for any signs of life, using cameras, using search dogs, listening devices. So they are going to be as aggressive as possible. And you again have to recognize that it's an extremely dangerous operation. They're picking through a lot of steel, a lot of twisted rubble. And now, to compound it, you have the potential danger of an additional collapse.
Can you tell exactly what we're looking at right now? Do you know this particular structure? I won't blame you if you don't.
I do not. That looks actually like the bridge across the way.
Across West Street.
I think that is the bridge across West Street. And I know from talking to folks today that the goal is to try and clear West Street and to try and clear a path.
Because it's very difficult to operate in this part of town. There is only one really main road, is there not? And that's the West Side Highway, which goes right past between the trade towers and the river.
Yeah, you either have to move debris either going north up the West Side Highway, or you have to move it going south down through the Battery Tunnel or around the tip of Manhattan. It's a little easier right now because all of lower Manhattan is shut down, so they're giving priority to the heavy equipment, to the dump trucks. The city has done an incredible job. It's staging equipment on Houston Street, which is north of the World Trade Center. And when one dump truck is filled, another one's in there. There is not a moment of downtime. They are moving very quickly to get as much debris out as possible. And at the same time, these rescue teams are operating in this dangerous environment trying to find people.
Now, just for people in other parts of the country, remind them how close this is actually to Wall Street.
Well, this is literally the Millennium Hotel. If it were to fall to the east or fall away from the Trade Center, could in fact hit Wall Street. The debris could hit Wall Street, depending on which way it's leaning. And my understanding is it's leaning in towards the Trade Center. Again, it's about a 25-story building. Wall Street is a block away, right on the other side of Broadway.
Now, there are a huge number of ambulances waiting all the time as part of the search and hopefully rescue operation. One Liberty Plaza and these other buildings in the immediate area have been evacuated.
Absolutely.
So there's nobody in One Liberty Plaza. What are it's the consequences of it falling on top of other debris, which is what causes you so much concern?
Sure. There's a couple of concerns. One, you have people operating underneath, trying to do rescues, trying to find victims, and you really have to be careful with your rescue operation and not put people in the collapse zone. We've already lost over 200 very, very brave people who were in the buildings trying to save lives. And lost their lives in the process. You want to do everything humanly possible not to let that happen again. So you have to establish a collapse zone around these buildings that are in danger of collapsing.
In other words, you can only search as long as the searchers are in a safe position and are able to search.
Right.
We're joined by ABC's John Miller again, who's been with us, and I heard the two of you talking a little earlier about the fact that the FBI is actually, what, John, operating out of a garage?
Yeah, the FBI left its headquarters at 26 Federal Plaza, the Federal Building in Lower Manhattan, a giant symbol of the government's might, a huge complex, and moved into a garage enclosed in a warehouse on the west side of Manhattan, assessing that their federal building had become yet another target for terrorists and that it would be better for them to operate off-site. And so they have set up a massive office, run hundreds of telephone lines into this cavernous concrete garage.
And now the Federal Emergency Management Agency is going to move back into that building. So that building's in decent shape.
It is in decent shape. One of the reasons they moved out was because they had no gas, no water. They now have the fire department supplying water. They are trying to get the FEMA operation back into the building tonight. Last I talked with them, it looked like they would move some of the resources from New Jersey back into the building tonight. And they'll coordinate this operation from a federal level out of the federal building.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. If you have time to stay with us, I'd be very grateful. As you watch them work on a site in which your office has been wiped out, and for which you never actually could possibly plan. George Stephanopoulos is down in that part of town. George?
Yes, Peter, I'm here at Duane and Church Street, which is a little farther up than we were before from the World Trade Center. But if you look over my left shoulder, you can see One Liberty Plaza with 2 floors lit up quite high up. I'm not sure if the lights are preventing you from seeing it, but it's right over my left shoulder there. We've been told by 2 firefighters who just left the scene that search and rescue operations have resumed around the World Trade Center area. I'm not certain that they're right up at the One Liberty Plaza, but they have said that they are working away right now. I can add, when I was there earlier this afternoon, Peter, it was very clear that that building had taken some severe hits, but it didn't seem as severely damaged, say, as some of the buildings on the south side of the plaza. Finally, Peter, we have some additional information from 2 FBI agents who have confirmed that there's a gas leak near City Hall, which is also in this lower tip of Manhattan, a little further east, and then they're evacuating that neighborhood and moving people up to the north.
Okay, George Stephanopoulos, thank you very much. So people downtown just simply continue to be moved about. And you saw a vigil there with people holding candles. That's outside St. Vincent's Hospital, one of the hospitals that has been deeply involved in either treating people or waiting to treat people. There are 170 hospitals in New York City. And I think that Cynthia McFadden is down there at that candlelight vigil this evening. Cynthia?
Peter, we are here. This is a vigil that has started across the street from St. Vincent's Hospital. You'll see some of the people have, I don't see them now. In fact, the air is clearer right now, but for the last half hour or so, there has been an acrid electrical fire smoke in the air here. People are grabbing surgical masks, like the one I'm holding in my hand, to help them breathe. Some people are making makeshift masks. It has been extremely difficult to breathe. The fire department and rescue workers tell us that this is an electrical fire. They believe, although we hear confirmation of a gas leak as well. We're about a mile north of the Twin Towers here, but the wind has shifted in the last couple of hours. And so they have moved the rescue operation, the triage operation here inside. You'll see that while there were people out on the sidewalk all day, the bulk of the medical personnel have now moved inside. That is because of this acrid smoke and because of concerns about these health issues. I can confirm a new number, Peter. St. Vincent's Hospital has processed 604 patients through their emergency rooms, 449 here behind me, and then at other St. Vincent's hospitals around the city, the rest of the bulk of the patients. We have seen a stream of dump trucks, cranes, lights, generators heading behind me downtown. You'll see a couple coming down now, I think, as well as military personnel. We saw military police vehicles, Humvees, going downtown just a while ago.
Many thanks, Cynthia McFadden at St. Vincent's Hospital tonight, and she talks about the atmosphere down there at the moment. We're farther up the west side at ABC News headquarters, and you can smell what is happening downtown all the way up the west side. That may be the result of the wind shift. Now, let us turn now to the investigation of who may have done this and how much progress the various intelligence agencies in the nation may have made today. ABC's Pierre Thomas is with us in Washington. Pierre, bring us up to date, would you?
Well, Peter, I just had a very interesting conversation with a very senior government official who tells me that they're learning more information about the people who may have flown those planes into the World Trade Center and also the Pentagon. At least 2 of these people had been certified at that school, at this flight school in Vero Beach, Florida. And we're told by this particular source that they had been getting training there for more than a year. So this operation may have been developing for quite some time. Also, I'm being told that they're trying to find out when these men might have been recruited. Again, the operative figure in this may be Osama bin Laden.
Okay, thank you very much, Pierre. We'll come back to you in the course of the evening. Naturally, ABC's John Miller is with us. John, I know we've done it before, but give us an overall handle on the investigation as of, what, 8:20, 5:20 in the West.
Federal authorities now believe that there were between 3 and 6 hijackers on each plane. Right. They now believe they know the names of all of them, or at least the names or identities they were using. They have traced some of them backwards to rented cars, to hotels, to other states, and ultimately to Canada, possibly as a port of entry. 3 people, 2 men, 2 women and a man, are being held in Boston, not charged in any way in connection with this case, but being held for investigation of their immigration status. They were located coming out of the hotel room rented by one of the alleged hijackers. 2 more are being held in New Jersey. They were picked up last night Federal authorities are now indicating while their immigration status is continuing to be examined, they are not panning out in all likelihood as suspects in this case. 3 were picked up on a train that was stopped by federal authorities in Providence, Rhode Island, also being investigated for their immigration status, not charged in this case, but being questioned about their associations with people who may have been involved in this case.
You made a very interesting point earlier today, I thought worth repeating, that in terms of men who intend to become members of a suicide mission, they're not, or have not appeared today to be particularly concerned about what information or evidence or paper trail they left behind.
No, they did leave a trail behind. I mean, if you look at the Logan Airport leads, they had an argument with another motorist, which attracted attention. That led police to the car, which led the FBI to the hotel, which led them to the 3 people they're looking at now. One of the interesting things they found in that hotel room was a lot of luggage, more than it seemed to be appropriate for the 3 people they found, and hair dye, which now they're wondering if the people who were leaving were going to use to change their appearance so that they wouldn't look to other witnesses later how they looked to the witnesses who could identify them.
Was there talk about a training video in the trunk of the car? Is any confirmation of that?
Yes, in the automobile found at Logan Airport, a training video on how to fly a commercial aircraft. In luggage found at the airport, Arabic language training manuals for flying planes. This, the white...
Thanks to our affiliate in Boston, WCVB, we actually have a picture of the car which they were taking away to search.
White Mitsubishi Mirage that they were keyed into by a witness who said he had an argument with them in the airport, apparently over parking space. Thought nothing of it at the time, got to his destination, heard about the explosion, that one of the flights emanated from Boston, put some things together in his head, used his cell phone, and called the Massachusetts State Police and the FBI.
And I'm sorry, but I've forgotten precisely how many leads the Attorney General said they were following tonight, but I think he said a couple of thousand leads they were following, and there is a site on the web, at least, which the FBI has set up so that they can basically troll for information from any corner of the globe, which people may want to contribute to this.
They've set up what they call a massive lead bucket. They're using hotline numbers. They're using a website. They have 4,000 FBI agents assigned to the case, unprecedented number, backed up by 3,000 support people, non-agents in the analyst end, the scientific end, the intelligence end, they are looking at the rented cars, the telephone bills from the residences that they've traced these people to. Who did they call? Who are those people? What are their connections? Videotapes from parking lots where they may have been. Videotapes that are around their homes and stores they might have been to from receipts that they're looking at as a result of search warrants. They're really trying to retrace their last steps.
ABC's Brian Ross is also with us tonight, as he has been on various occasions during the day. I think, Brian, you can just add to this investigation knowledge, can you?
Yes, Peter. A very sharp focus is on the various flight schools around the country, from Florida to Minneapolis, where they believe some of these terrorists may have obtained their knowledge of how to fly a plane, may have trained in simulators for advanced jets like the 757 or the 767. Any number of flight schools now have had visits from the FBI. There are connections to Minneapolis that are being explored tonight by the FBI, and throughout Florida, particularly around the Vero Beach area, as Pierre had reported earlier. It seems to be an intriguing focus for the FBI, the extent to which these men set out more than a year ago to obtain knowledge of how to fly a plane.
I talked earlier today to the CEO of Huffman Aviation, and he did point out that they learned how to fly small airplanes there and then moved on to schools, which I think people were probably fairly surprised to hear actually could give you training in 757s and 767s, the aircrafts involved in yesterday's crisis.
If you have enough money, you can rent the simulators for up to $2,000 an hour and actually learn. One school has a 16-day course to learn how to fly or to handle a 757 or a 767 if you have some sort of stated reason for doing that. That has been, from the very beginning, a very sharp focus that the list of suspects would include people specifically trained in how to fly a jetliner.
Okay.
We went on to the
Sorry, John, go ahead.
FAA's Airman site, which tracks and lists pilots' license, and found that 2 of the people that they were looking at as possible hijackers who had residences in Vero Beach around that school, who had been students there, went on to other schools. They were licensed pilots, rated for turbojets, and rated for instrument flying. So they had come a fairly long way. And remember the type of flying that they had to do. The most difficult part, we were told, is taking off and landing, most difficult and dangerous.
Right.
They didn't have to take off, and they didn't have to consider landing. They had to master steering the aircraft, controlling the speed and altitude, and aiming.
Thanks, John Miller, and Brian Ross as well. We'll come back to this subject repeatedly. Let's go to Washington now, though, to see how this city has ended its day, and it has been a very busy day on, Claire Shipman is there at the White House now, on a single subject. I don't think any other business has been done today, do you?
No, absolutely not, Peter, although as a footnote, of course, the White House did reopen for public tours today, which shows that there might be some people thinking about something else, but certainly not very many. Starting at the Pentagon, we're told there are no hope of survivors at this point. A bit of good news, if you can even call it that, hopeful news, that the estimate, and again I want to repeat, estimate of the number of victims there was scaled back throughout the day from what we thought at one point could be as many as 800 people, perhaps down to 100 or 200. But again, the Defense Secretary has made it plain that's an estimate, and he is hoping that it has gone that low. President Bush, as we said he wanted to do earlier today, did end up visiting the Pentagon. He left the White House and spent a little bit of time over there meeting and greeting rescue workers, and described himself as sad and angry. Peter?
Sad and angry, pretty much the way the country is. Thanks very much. Now let's go to a news conference being held by the Mayor of New York, Rudolph Giuliani.
Helped us in every way. The Speaker, Shelley Silver, who's with us, the Majority Leader. We're going to need their help and their assistance, including the work they're going to do for us tomorrow in the special session. I can't express to the elected officials that are here the sense of strength and support that I feel for the people of the city in having this bipartisan and very talented group of legislators and political leaders helping the people of the city that we all love and are joined together with that common love and common interest. Governor, thank you.
Thank you.
Governor of New York, George Pataki.
Mayor, let me just again thank you for your leadership and the extraordinary efforts of you and your team. And we are delighted to have so many of our Washington representatives and Director Albaugh here with us this afternoon. As I said earlier, within an hour of the incident, I'd spoken to both Senator Schumer and Senator Clinton, and they had said whatever we need from Washington, they would be there to do. We've spoken with the President and Vice President a number of times since then, and we are very grateful for the support of the federal government. And Director Albaugh, we're delighted that you are here personally this evening to tour the site, to see what we saw earlier this evening, and to help us get through this. One of the things that the mayor and I learned under very tragic circumstances with TWA Flight 800 is that it's not just dealing with the victims, with the immediate crisis, with the health and safety concerns of those at the site. It's dealing with the families. It's dealing with the survivors, those who don't know if their loved one has been lost or not, those who don't know where to go for grief counseling or help. And earlier today, the state turned over the armory on 25th Street to the city, and the city has already moved in place its team so that family members can go there to the armory. The exact address is 68 Lexington Avenue and 25th Street and Lexington Avenue. It is open tonight. It will be open again tomorrow morning and continue to be open so that we will be able to have a central point where those families who have concerns can go, can be with other families, can be with professional grief counselors, and get the support that they need to get them through this tragedy. You know, there's no one in New York and there's no one in America whose heart hasn't been touched by this tragedy. But to those families, to those kids whose mother didn't come home, or those children whose fathers are unknown in their whereabouts, we have to be there for them. And Mayor, again, your team is doing a great job. More than 2,500 family members have gone through that center today. and we will have this up, we will have this running, and Director Albaugh has indicated that we will have federal grief counselors there as well. As the need arises, the city has it fully staffed and
We'll just stay with the picture here for just a moment, but between the governor and the mayor there is, in fact, Joe Albaugh, the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and he's come up here obviously to New York today. This is one of the very tight triangle of people who was responsible for getting George W. Bush elected, and he's now the head of FEMA, and he has been here in New York today getting a lot of thanks from the governor of New York, Senator Schumer of New York, and just in a short while from now we're going to have a chance to talk to Senator Clinton of New York, who is here as well, because there has been a very generous mood in the Senate today, an appropriately generous mood, one would, many people in the country would believe, about giving assistance to New York, giving the city whatever it needs to get itself back on its feet. And it will not be long, given the sort of spirit of the time, when people will begin to talk about rebuilding the Trade Center as at least as an issue. But we want to return to this issue of whether, shouldn't say whether, but of what the spokesman for the president said today was that the White House was a target. ABC's Martha Raddatz has been investigating this. She's at the State Department tonight. Martha, just by way of background for folks, the president's press spokesman said today that the White House was a target of the aircraft which ended up crashing into the Pentagon. And nobody quite understands what it is they have that led him to this conclusion. Can you add to this?
I can, Peter. Just a short time ago, I spoke to a senior official who has been in the highest level briefings. He told me what they saw was an airplane circling over the White House. The airplane that eventually hit the Pentagon, he said, was in a flight pattern over the White House that made them believe that the White House was indeed the target. I asked him what the fourth airplane was doing. There were rumors yesterday that the fourth airplane was also headed for Washington, D.C., and if he knew what the target of that airplane was, he said, I don't know, we don't know. There were a lot of targets. You're standing in one of them, he said.
So the speculation that it was the United Airlines flight that crashed in Pennsylvania may have been originally intended, or was originally trying to go to Washington under the direction of terrorists. That is still pretty much an issue which we don't understand.
That's true. We don't understand that. They do believe it was headed for Washington, D.C., but they're not certain about that. But again, they believe that that airplane that eventually hit the Pentagon was first targeting the White House. He said they don't know why it went back off course and headed for the Pentagon, but he said after it circled around the White House, it suddenly turned and then went into the Pentagon.
Okay, thanks very much, Martha Raddatz at the State Department tonight. And of course, one of the ways we shall be able to figure that out is looking, as we did yesterday, at some of the flight patterns of at least one of the aircraft and what its behavior was after it left Boston. So we shall work on that this evening. But let's go downtown in Manhattan at the moment to ABC's Bill Blakemore.
Peter, we've just been watching the police and volunteer doctors evacuate this very tall building next to us, 40 stories high. They say because the air down here has become so bad that they're having to make sure that elderly people, people with breathing problems, there was a number in this building, are taken up to public shelters. The doctors told me that they're trying to get the word out that anybody who lives in Lower Manhattan should not use their air conditioners because that sucks in air from outside and does not necessarily filter out the asbestos. People should close their windows if they live down here at the very least, and that everybody should take the public health warnings that have been given by doctors' groups today about this air very seriously. They say that meters have shown there is a serious asbestos content in this air from the fire and the dust in the wreckage behind us.
Okay, Bill, thanks very much. ABC's Bill Blakemore in Lower Manhattan, and he wouldn't put that up, I think, to his mouth and his nose if it were not needed. And we've seen a lot of people, though it's very interesting to see the people at St. Vincent Hospital down there tonight, some of them without those masks. And they will be necessary for people. And we are many, 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 many blocks away from Lower Manhattan, even though we're on the west side. And you can smell it a little bit in this building. You can smell the results of that crisis center in Lower New York, a very long distance up the west side, as we all are along the edges of the Hudson River. We've talked many times today about the search for the victims. You've seen pictures tonight of people coming with simple photographs of their relatives and just stood outside St. Vincent's Hospital in one case, holding up the pictures in the hope, and sometimes we believe it may be the faint hope, that somebody will have seen a member of their family. And we saw any number of incidents yesterday. We followed a young girl and her sister yesterday as they went in search of their father and ultimately found him. And so in that sort of visible desperation tonight, you get some sense of the anxiety that people feel. Now, some people who have lost their lives in this attack on the United States, either on the aircraft or in the Pentagon or in the trade towers here in New York City, are known to all Americans. Everything is a personal story, everything is a meaningful story. But some of the victims of this are known to a wider audience. Here's ABC's Jackie Judd.
Minutes before the United plane went down in Pennsylvania, Fort Myers, Florida police officer Lauren Lyle's phone rang. It was his wife, Cece, an attendant on Flight 93.
To hear my wife tell me she loved me through all the chaos that probably was going on that plane, to call me to tell me she loved me, well, is embedded in my heart.
Cece Lyles also had two sons. The plane that slammed into the Pentagon yesterday carried heartbreak for families all around Washington. 3 children and their teachers, selected to take part in a National Geographic ecology conference, were on board. Hilda Taylor taught elementary school.
She was the best 6th grade teacher ever.
Also on board, a family of 4 beginning a journey to Australia, where Leslie Whittington, a Georgetown University professor, was going to teach.
She sure as hell touched me. She was an energetic, powerful, dynamic, strong-willed, passionate, caring lady with a dynamite sense of humor and love of life. And God, she is a loss to humanity.
A flight attendant on board, Michelle Heidenberger, died, her family said, a hero, putting her passengers and crew first.
Michelle is or was a very sweet woman and has 2 children.
At the Pentagon, an office now in ruins was where Rosemary Chapa worked as an intelligence analyst. Minutes before impact, she had called her daughter and left a message.
She just said, "Hi, darling, give me a call." That was it.
Rosemary Chapa has not been heard from since. The Archbishop of Washington said today his family has not heard from Michael Lynch, a New York City firefighter.
And he apparently went in early, one of those companies that went in early, and I guess he must have been in the building when it collapsed.
Archbishop McCarrick says he was supposed to preside at his cousin's wedding later this year. Also in New York, the victim's number, John Oganowski, a father of 3, the pilot of Flight 11.
It's hard to explain losing your big brother.
There are, of course, many, many more victims. Today, the airlines released the flight manifests with the names of the passengers, the pilots, the flight attendants on all 4 doomed airplanes. Jackie Judd, ABC News, Washington.
As ABC, beg your pardon, as people try to make these connections, as people continue to search for their families, we know and have said before how hard it is on the children. We've talked to several people today who emphasize how important it is to talk to children about this, but to keep children removed from the violence if you can, if they're particularly young. Here's a report on the state of the children from ABC's Michelle Norris.
For America's youngest citizens, yesterday's events were particularly horrifying. For students, their sense of security shattered by terror striking so close to home.
All these hijackings, missing planes, it's scary.
It's scary. I don't know what can happen.
I'm angry at the nation. I think somebody isn't doing their job.
With Washington still reeling from yesterday's attack on the Pentagon, all area schools made a collective decision. Children should stay home from class and spend the day with loved ones instead.
I feel a little better because I'm with my family and I feel that I'm protected.
It was kind of hard to explain to her what an act of terrorism is. It's not that it was an accident.
But it is especially hard to provide an explanation that makes sense to students who live in areas targeted by the terrorists, the buildings, places they had visited quite often. Among the victims, people they knew and loved.
He was a good friend.
I just put my head on the desk And that's when I looked up and some people was crying.
There will be heavy hearts and empty desks when students return to schools here in Washington tomorrow morning. 3 D.C. teachers and 3 top students were on the plane that crashed into the Pentagon.
What about the things that people saw?
You go to sleep at night feeling really guilty and feeling like you should be there doing something about it.
You have to wonder what would make a person hate a nation so much that they'll go and kill all these people.
Children should know that this country has been through many attacks over many hundreds of years, and that we have survived and we grow stronger, and that they are safer here than anywhere in the world.
But as the wreckage still smolders and the casualties mount, conveying that sense of safety and security will be a tough assignment for schools and for parents. Michelle Norris, ABC News, Washington.
There is the implication in one of the participants in that piece that a nation is made stronger by being tested. And of course, whether it is here in New York or in Pennsylvania tonight or at the Pentagon, this is all about individuals. Here's ABC's Chris Wallace.
On this day after, Navy Petty Officer Charles Lewis was being treated in a Virginia hospital for smoke inhalation and lacerations. But he knew it could have been much worse. At 9:30 yesterday morning, he was in the Navy Command Center in the Pentagon, watching pictures of the attack on the World Trade Center.
There were a lot of people standing around watching the news footage and watching the live broadcast, and just thinking, if that happened there, I mean, there's no telling, you know, what's next.
10 minutes later, Lewis says he was in a meeting on the first floor deep inside the building, in Corridor 4 between the B and C rings.
The next thing you heard behind us was an explosion, and it sounded like a big gust of wind, and it just slammed straight in the back of us. It was just pitch black, and all you heard was people screaming for help. All you heard was walls falling, just the whole room, everything just coming down on top of us.
And what was the smoke like? What was?
It was black, almost like tar. It's like the fumes were just heavy, and they just lingered there in your chest, just like your chest and your throat. Felt like it was just burning.
Lewis says he was trapped for 15 to 20 minutes before emergency teams rescued him. He knows one of the other people in the room was also saved, but he still doesn't know what happened to the third person.
When you were sitting there in that room, trapped, thick, black, acrid smoke, did you think this might be it?
For a minute, yeah. I thought that was it. I thought about my kids. I thought about my family. I wanted to see my kids and my family again.
Lewis has been in the Navy for 12 years and saw combat in the Gulf War. But he says this is the most danger he's ever been in.
Do you feel that what you experienced yesterday was combat?
Yeah, I do. I feel it. I mean, it was a deliberate act, of terrorism.
Another individual story, and of course everybody believes it was a deliberate act of terrorism, and the president said today that the country is clearly, this is an act of war, and the implications of that are extraordinarily serious for the United States, and everybody knows that throughout the United States today, everybody is hoping and praying that the person or persons and government or governments responsible for this, complicit in any way, will be identified very quickly. And as you heard from the Attorney General, there's a huge investigation going on tonight. I realize as we continue our coverage on a full-time basis like this that we repeat much of the information that you will have heard before if you've been around for the entire time. We also recognize that people get on with their lives and come and go, and so we keep revisiting our key correspondents and our key locations to simply bring us and you hopefully up to date, which takes us back to the Pentagon. John McCarthy, I think in some ways the most significant piece of news out of the Pentagon today, at least to my ears and perhaps others, is the fact that not as many people perished as had been bandied about last night.
Well,
the numbers are still very squishy, Peter, because they're discovering not only do they have to account for the military personnel and the civilian personnel, but what about visitors? What about the workers who work in this building doing the reconstruction of it? Those are people that they hadn't thought about, and they are still searching for answers to that. But it does appear somewhere between 100 and 150 people died in the Pentagon situation here. That is the number that the range of number that they are now focusing on.
Now, we've done it before, I know, but review for us, if you would, the President's visit to the Pentagon today in two respects. One, we have some videotape of him because we were allowed to accompany him over to the Pentagon, and also the impact it had on the people who worked there.
Well, I think quite clearly when the Commander-in-Chief comes to the Pentagon, it is always a very special time. This was especially emotional. The President has been expressing a desire not only to visit this site, but to go to New York, and to go to New York is much more complex, and he might very well get in the way of things. But he was able to come and offer encouraging words to the firemen, to the workers, to the people who had been doing some of the more grisly work of beginning to remove the remains from the building. Today that process really did begin. They've been tagging bodies, putting them in body bags, and moving them away.
Now, the President's been walking around in the pictures we're looking at with the Secretary of Defense, Don Rumsfeld. Can you put into perspective for us today what Mr. Rumsfeld was trying to say? And that, by the way, is the President's National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice. And I think that's the first time we have seen her since this crisis began. She and Vice President Cheney were in the White House throughout, while the President was first in Florida and then on his cross-country trip. Let's listen.
We're here to say thanks to not only the workers on this site, but the workers who are doing the same work in New York City. Coming here makes me sad on the one hand. It also makes me angry. And our country will, however, not be cowed by terrorists.
And this was clearly one of the most memorable occasions of the day in a symbolic fashion. Everybody who lives in the United States, anyone who knows the United States, no matter where they live, understands how strongly the country feels about the flag. And that was a group of firefighters who, I gather, John, wanted the President to see, as much as anything else, the flag on the side of the Pentagon had been attacked when he arrived there today.
Absolutely, Peter. During the course of the last 36 hours, there have been several flags draped from various positions in the ruined part of the Pentagon, and several have been hoisted on flag poles above the Pentagon. So all of the pictures of the area, although it was damaged, there was always a picture of the American flag visible. This larger flag that they draped there was clearly a symbolic gesture from them to let the country know that this building was open and that the business was continuing here, even if some of the business was pretty terrible today.
Now, as I said, the Secretary of Defense was seen there with the President. He showed up quite spontaneously, or perhaps not spontaneously, but without much notice, in the press room of the Pentagon today, and described at first this definition of a new battlefield in the world. And then he quite directly, we couldn't quite figure out what he was saying about people who had access to information about the investigation were, among other things, compromising the country and violating criminal law by releasing this information to whom? To the press?
To the press, partly, and to the potential enemies of the United States. This is a Secretary of Defense who feels obviously very strongly the whole purpose, I have been told, that he came down to the Pentagon briefing room was to deliver a message, and it's really not to the press that he's delivering the message. It is to other government officials, cabinet officials. It is to other people that work in the Pentagon who are providing detailed information about the terrorists and about some of the movements of the terrorists. And he refused to comment, for example, on the thing that the White House press secretary revealed today, that in fact the terrorists may have been wanting to target Air Force One and the White House. When he was asked that question, he said, "I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters." So he clearly, in some respects, I believe, was trying to chastise many government officials.
I wonder if this goes back in part to a couple of politicians on Capitol Hill yesterday, with whom we had a conversation, to put it politely, who appeared to have knowledge from intelligence briefings and were talking about it, at least in a limited way, in the public arena.
That may have been part of the conversation, but part of the reason that he came down to the Pentagon briefing room, but I really feel that it was aimed primarily at the people here in the Pentagon who deal with the press, and also other high-ranking government officials in the executive branch of the government that have been talking quite openly about some of those issues. Certainly, the senator in question was talking about some of those issues, and I'm sure Don Rumsfeld did not approve of that.
I think you're referring to Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah.
Yes,
the Secretary of Defense is not the first Secretary of Defense to struggle with the Pentagon as a universe unto its own. I wonder if in the last 24 hours, whether or not he's made progress in getting a handle on the overall deliberations of the Pentagon that maybe he didn't have a week ago.
Well, when you're in crisis, you see the good, the bad, but you also see the way that the military works, Peter. When the headquarters of the United States military is attacked, it's really an amazing thing to see the way a trained military group of people operate. When the hallways are full of smoke, they go to rendezvous points. It's totally different in the civilian world than it is in the military world. There are preparations, there are plans, and